Everybody's logged in. Mr. Armour, you're logged in?
Yes, sorry, Jack.
Just asking.
No, I knew it was live.
Okay, who do we have on the telephone lines?
Trustee Swan.
Welcome, Trustee Swan. Trustee Garrow, do we have you there?
Trustee Garrow, good evening, everyone.
Great to hear your voice. And, okay, so I want to call to order the regular meeting, May the 24th, 2017, and I'll ask us to stand for the singing of O Canada. Director, can I ask you to do roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our meeting of 24 May 2017. Trustee Armour.
Present.
First Vice Chair Carpenter.
Present.
Trustee Krem.
Present.
Trustee Garrow.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Grace Marr.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 3.02 to 3.03, May the 24th, 2017, as submitted. Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Richards. I ask you to cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing there are none, I'm going to move to report from the private session. At its committee of the whole meeting in private session, May the 10th, 2017, one property matter and one personnel matter was discussed. One recommendation is brought forward to the board, and I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the motion carried in committee of the whole session under agenda item D1, May the 10th, 2017, moved by Trustee Karkner, seconded by Trustee Armour. I'm going to ask you to cast your votes for that, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to our first presentation for this evening. It's the Indigenous Education. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Edwards, who will introduce Mr. Montgomery, Palmer, and Mr. Campbell to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Chair McMillan. And we're pleased to bring this, and I'd like to invite Vice Principal of Indigenous Education, Jamie Campbell, up, and our Indigenous student support teacher, system student support teacher, Bill Montgomery, to the table. and Jim Palmer, one of our outstanding teachers in Athens District High School that is teaching, has taught many of the Indigenous education courses, but currently teaching the Indigenous teacher program to the table for answering of any questions that we might have at the end. And I think to begin this presentation, we wish to acknowledge that the schools and the offices of the Upper Canada District School Board, where we work every day, where we play, where we learn, and where we teach, is on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people. Tonight's presentation is about encouraging student voice and showing this piece of the front end of this student voice within our Indigenous Studies program. The topics that we're going to discuss and take a look at tonight in this presentation is how the ministry's GNSN funding supports the programs that we offer, our Indigenous Student Leadership iLead program, our pilot that's taking place with 10 of our schools on the Contemporary Aboriginal Voices, the NBE courses, our Truth and Reconciliation +2 gatherings that we hosted about 2 weeks ago, and some of the considerations of some of the challenges, considerations for some of the successes, and the possibilities going from that. Our enrollment, our funding from the ministry is based on our enrollment. And you can see that over the last few years it's remained, been fairly consistent. This funding supports system staff and resources. It supports teachers for language courses in our Indigenous studies, and it supports our professional learning and classroom supports. In addition to our students from Akwesasne, we have close to 600 self-identified students of First Nations, Métis, or Inuit ancestry. And so with this funding, from this enrollment-based funding, to support our plan, we work within the ministry's framework to improve student achievement and well-being among our Indigenous students, and we work to close the achievement gap between Indigenous students and non-Indigenous students. This funding supports our plan, and it also includes raising awareness with both our elementary and our secondary schools about First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples, about their cultures, histories, perspectives, and contributions. And tonight, we are going to share 3 of our key initiatives, namely the iLead program, our Aboriginal Voices program, and our TRC gathering to address these goals. At the core of our programming is the student voice, and is our iLead leadership program. This program continues the path of the first classroom described in that quote there by Romaine Mitchell, a program leader who now works with the ministry, who is now a Ministry of Education officer. Romaine Mitchell began this journey at CCVS for Upper Canada about 7 years ago. What we know is what we know shapes who we are. And culture is not a perk for an Aboriginal child. It is a lifeline. Our iLead program at the very front end is informed by student voice and guided by our Indigenous community partners, elders, and knowledge facilitators. As Justice Mary Sinclair has said, reconciliation is about maintaining and forging respectful relationships. There is no shortcut to that. So with the guidance of Indigenous support teacher Bill Montgomery, our Indigenous elders within our communities, and our Indigenous facilitators work with our students and our teacher leaders, and together they learn about the relationships of Indigenous that are important in Indigenous cultures. They learn about the diversity of Indigenous communities, and our iLead students learn and they develop their understanding of well-being and how ways of knowing and believing have an emotional response to experience. I'd like to turn it over to Bill to talk further.
I'd like to Sangyala, Bill Montgomery, Yatsate Kilhinudikyang, Di Hadagan, Yathan Sklujis Hinudikyang, Gayalas Gustudi Kwalagan, Di U Yagulangangan, Eskian Atlant Is At Digodagalagan, Jahawa. The Indigenous Leadership Program has continued to be one of our key focuses this year. It originated as a Native Student Leadership Program, focusing on aiding transition for our AMBI tuition students into our high schools in Cornwall. We've grown drastically in the last couple of years. As Superintendent Edwards stated, we've grown to 600 for our self-ID'd, which has doubled, almost tripled in the last 2 to 3 years, as well as our Indigenous leaders. We've grown to well over 110 per session. When 2 to 3 years ago, we were looking at between approximately 30 students. That evolution and that growth, there's a specific reason for it. Superintendent Edwards has always stressed the importance of student voice. Our students have demanded our direction, and we've listened to them. It's caused a diversity in our presentation with our presenters, our elders, and our knowledge keepers. We alternate between First Nations, Métis, and Inuit presenters continually, and we always ask that they bring something to share with the students, something that they can create and bring home with them. That creates a deeper understanding with their students, and also when they go back to their schools and to their families, if they notice something they're wearing or carrying, such as a keychain, a lapel pin, and if they ask what that is, they can resort to those teachings that they've been presented that day and share it with their peers and their families, helping substantiate that knowledge and that awareness with all those their inner circles. We've grown to the point now where even our teachers, as Mr. Palmer is one of our key members, have continually attended. We used to require to bring supply teachers to accompany our students to our iLead sessions. Now our teachers are very disappointed if they are unable to attend. It's given us a unique opportunity to create that rapport and that bond between our students and our staff. We have strong advocates with our teachers, our LCIs, and our principals as well. Some of the teachings that we provided with them, the Turo Wampum, giving that opportunity, that space, and that peaceful place to gather together creates that respect and that understanding of each other, and also builds on that friendship and that understanding, so that our students feel comfortable within our schools and with our staff. We've been forewarning our students that we're going to bring them to that leadership role as well. This has certainly been happening the last couple of years. Some students, as Katie Budge has presented to us for community events such as the Lanark County support groups. In the lower picture, you'll see a few of our students from one of our high schools. We're constantly having demands for authentic voice within our feeder schools or elementary schools. We're at the point now where we're asking our high school iLead students to band together and to be able to attend our elementary schools and provide knowledge to our younger students. As you see in our small logo there, we're not creating leaders. The leaders that leading, the ability to lead is already within them. We're providing that drum, that voice, those experiences that they can be heard. Our goal is to have our students to feel safe, for them to become leaders and advocates, help developing the necessary awareness within our communities, and strengthening the relations between our Indigenous peoples and our non-Indigenous. And I think we're on a good route for that. Mr. Campbell.
So, a question that we always have to ask is, how do we know? How do we know we're making a difference? We're really, at every iLead session, at every student well-being session, we always end with a reflection, a circle with a talking stick, and a reflection time is built into every session. And one of the things that we know that we need to get better at, and as well other boards, and we're all talking together about sharing and discussing with other boards about tools and ways of capturing the data for the well-being, and how do we know, and capturing that and turning that into data also for achievement. This is our second year of tracking for our iLead students. We started last year with the tracking and of learning from this and helping to respond to the data. Similar to school boards from across the province, Upper Canada's evidence is such that educational attainment for Indigenous students is still a real issue. And it's one that we continually need to monitor, continually need to respond to, and continually need to address. As Trustee Garrow has said, it's not the kids who are in the gap, it's the educational response. So what are we doing to continually to try to remedy that? One key question our teams, from our leadership team, our senior team, to our teams that have principals and teachers that come together to discuss Indigenous education, reflect on, is how do we create timetables and course calendars which are reflective of the communities we serve. For example, we have students who have missed over 300 classes this year. However, they never miss an iLead session. We believe through the work with our well-being that in working in a good way of restoring Indigenous ways of knowing and seeing, and helping to create that safe sense that Bill spoke about, of identity, that sense of pride and belonging, and helping our students to understand themselves as learners will help to close this gap. As many of you know, we had many snow days this year. And we had one iLead session, which was unfortunately canceled, but we were able to work with some students from CCVS, and Trustee Superintendent Tim Mills also attended. And we brought in Dr. Sean Lassard, who is a Cree, is Cree from the University of Alberta. And we brought him in, and he was going to be working with helping our students with the dialogue of learning and understanding, and specifically working with helping our students understand IEPs, because as you can see from that statistic, students within our iLead program, 50% more of them compared to the general Upper Canada population are on IEPs. So working to helping our students, our Indigenous students, advocate for themselves, advocate for their learning, helping them understand the importance and helping them to understand his journey of her learning to engage in the dialogue about expectations they might have for themselves and barriers which best reflect their interests and experiences. So we have those sessions planned, and Dr. Sean Lassard is planned to come to one of our first iLead sessions next year to speak right up at the very front end with the students on those student voices to help them better understand and be advocates for their own learning. During the iLead sessions, creating those safe spaces, the students have shared their school experiences, and they've shared with us their passions, and if Bill spoke about the student voice piece, and their students are coming through with a push and that edginess to their voices to really to push to see themselves and their cultures reflected in their studies. And so in response to this, we embarked on a pilot with 11 of our high schools to have all grades 11 students take Contemporary Aboriginal Voices course for their English credit. And what you can see from this graph, the teachers and our students responded. And they responded in such a good way that we have about 1,000 more credits, student credits, students taking the course than we initially thought. And Romaine Mitchell shared with us the other day that actually behind the Toronto District Catholic and Public School Board, we are the third highest board that's offering Indigenous studies in the province. So this is not only good for our Indigenous students, but it's good for all of our students. As the TRC report states, education is what got us here, and it's education that will get us out. So with this response for our students and our teachers, taking the response for wanting to teach Indigenous studies to our students, comes a responsibility for providing professional learning and to ensure that our Indigenous and non-Indigenous students hear from authentic voices. Our teachers and our communities are informed by the Indigenous community members to become better informed about their histories, about current perspectives, cultures, traditional values, contemporary lifestyles, and traditional knowledge. So for every Indigenous studies credit a student attempts, the ministry funds the board about $1,100 to help support this. Here's some quotes from some of our staff who have rolled up the sleeves and tried, and they're teaching this year. Our staff have approached this from a place of unlearning, a place of learning. They've come to it from a place of respect, and we've offered a tremendous amount of professional learning for our staff on this journey. Some teacher voices here that we've heard. This has been a fabulous co-learning situation, students and teachers learning together. Many of our sessions, we do have separate sessions, but many of our sessions, students and teachers are learning alongside. Students' voice, why didn't they just call it English? I didn't think I needed to learn about Indians in Canada. I was so wrong. There was so much I didn't know. It was crazy, including they're not Indians. As part of the course, we did a study of the school board self-identification document. I filled it out and self-identified as a First Nation person because of my Cree grandmother. Many of our students right now will be going through, culminating activities, and we've seen some excellent examples of one, and we just want to play one 3-minute clip for you.
I get racism every day of my life at 61 years old.
This area was a very important traditional meeting area.
This one is students are understanding how Indigenous and non-Indigenous students can work together towards reconciliation.
Every day of my life at 61 years old.
This area was a very important traditional meeting area for First Nations people.
They're making policies for Native people, but they've never, ever, ever been on a reserve.
Since the colonization of North America in the early 16th century, conflict between European settlers and the Indigenous people has existed. From the Indian Act established upon Confederation to the poverty-ridden housing reserves across the country, the regular victims of these ongoing feuds has been the Aboriginal community. Perhaps the most notorious governmentally imposed act of racism was the residential school system. In an effort to provide formal education to Indigenous people, children were forced to move away from their families and way of life and put into an institutionalized environment. They were obligated to live by westernized values, convert to Christianity, and forget the culture of their ancestors.
Today I stand before you and acknowledge that what took place in residential schools amounts to nothing short of cultural genocide.
Although the system was completely abolished by 1996, the years of abuse suffered by the community while attending the institutions has been found to be a primary cause of issues such as alcoholism, drug abuse, gang violence, and mental illness that continues to plague the community today. To dive deeper into Aboriginal affairs, we spoke with Ottawa-based photographer Fred Cattrall.
How long have you been a photographer?
Over 40 years, can you believe that? Like, how did that happen?
And you seem to have done well.
I'm having fun.
Yeah, that's good.
My concern today is what is Indian Northern Affairs doing? Because they're making policies for Native people, but they've never, ever, ever been on a reserve. Could you imagine to have the nerve today in 2017 to sit behind a desk in Ottawa and tell people how they're going to live their lives and never, ever stepped a foot on their property? Maybe these bureaucrats should go and live on a reserve for 6 months.
And see how they...
To see how they survive with these policies.
Do you believe things will get better?
Like I've often said, Native people are like rescue dogs. You know, we've beaten the hell out of them for so many years. That dog's not going to really be a functioning dog until they're loved again. It's a big problem. And I can't solve it, you can't solve it, but together we can solve it.
The rawness and the voices there are many culminating activities that we'll see, and we have many examples within the high schools that are very poignant and within the response and powerful, and which brings us to the TRC too.
So 2 weeks ago, we held our the board held its second Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The first 2 days, May 8th and 9th, at Duncan J. Schooler Public School. And in spite of the all-day snowfall that first Monday, over 400 students, grade 5 and 6 students from DJ Schooler, Lombardi, Montague, Chimo, and Wolford Public Schools attended Indigenous workshops led by Algonquin, Mohawk, Métis, Haida, and Inuit Indigenous leaders. And those workshops were also facilitated by our iLead and Native student leaders and their teachers from SFDCI, PDCI, Gananoque Secondary School, Athens, and Almont District High School. As part of our commitment to student voice, we asked all of those grade 5 and 6 students to tell us what they thought of the meaning of reconciliation by drawing on small paper orange t-shirts. You may have seen some of them on the display board when you came in to the meeting this evening. What they thought of the word, when they thought of the word reconciliation, and I won't read any, but you can read some certainly out on the board. But some of them included statements like happy acceptance, love, I am not a number, you are never alone. And this goes a long way. We now have 800 of these orange t-shirts, all of which are excellent anecdotal evidence and data in terms of student learning and beginning that future building of our Native student leader population. On the Monday evening, we also had a feast and celebration. We had expected 70 people and ended up feeding over 130 people, and many of you were able to attend that, and thank you very much for that. One of the highlights of the evening were speeches by our Indigenous student leaders, Katie Budge from Almont District High School and Brandon Cordy from PDCI, who spoke about their own personal journeys and struggles, and speaking from the heart about their desire to learn more about their Indigenous heritage. Brandon even speaking about needing to go and speak with his grandmother as he wasn't able to speak with his father about this, and getting to a point in his own growth process where he was able to go back to his own father and begin the process of teaching his own father more about their Indigenous heritage. Extremely powerful learning. And the evening was culminated by the passing on of the Bentwood box. We've got a picture of that also to the school that's holding the TRC +3 next year, which is Pineview Public School. The second 2 days were held at Bridgewood Public School, May 10th and 11th. It was a little warmer. And again, over 400 students from grade 5 and 6 students from Central, Viscount Alexander, Emer's Corners, and Bridgewood Public School attended. as well as iLead student leaders and teachers from Seaway District High School and CCVS. One of the highlights there was TJ Point, who is the AMBI student resource teacher at CCVS, came dressed in his Haudenosaunee regalia and brought many of his students who are community leaders and Indigenous leaders, and they took a very large role in organizing the day so that it became really a day for students by students, aided by Indigenous facilitators. We also asked grade 5 and 6 students to reflect on the meaning of reconciliation there, and again, many very powerful statements and reflections by grade 5 and 6 students. Again, saying things like, do not treat people like they don't belong. I am sorry for taking your family away, and we can fix this together. Very, very powerful reflections on the meaning of reconciliation. Another highlight were speeches by 2 of our iLead students. iLead student Senator Isaac Cole and Akwesasne student Senator Donka Thompson, both again reflected very powerfully on their own personal struggle with learning about their Indigenous heritage. Isaac was moved to tears in speaking, and I think also moved many of the other iLead Indigenous student leaders to tears with his really heartfelt reflection on his own journey. We ended that celebration on the Thursday with, again, the passing on of the Bentwood box from Bridgewood to Maxville Public School for next year.
So some considerations as we continue the journey. So considerations for us going forward. What are the strategies that will help us best achieve our classrooms and our course calendars to be reflective of our communities we serve? To diligently continue to build the relational trust with our Indigenous community members and to honor our commitments at the gatherings and with our teachers to build inclusive classrooms and responsive pedagogy, which is informed by community members. As we continue to grow our Indigenous Secondary Studies program, what experience for our students and staff should be consistent across the board. Jamie spoke about our iLead students, the idea of the Truth and Reconciliation gatherings of being for students, by students. How do we continue to support our Indigenous students and mentoring students? The question of how do we know? What is the data that will continue to inform? We have lots of narratives right now. What is the data that will inform our district and planning for our next steps in relation to the ministry's policy frameworks? And in June, in a couple of weeks, the director will be having the first of 3 sessions a year of the Indigenous Education Advisory Council, which will work with us to advise and work with our programs. And then right now the ministry, through the funding formula, supports the program. So economic sustainability is a strength, and the Indigenous Board wellness and achievement goals. That's always a consideration for moving forward with any programming. So just to conclude here, it's been an incredible journey this year. Made lots of gains, and we receive many bits of, as I said, anecdotal and reflective responses. And the other day, a letter to us came in after the TRC +2, and it said, "Dear Truth and Reconciliation Commission +2, I'm so happy that you hosted the event. Did you know my great grandpa is Mohawk? I love learning about Native history. I wish I could learn Mohawk language." And the letter goes on, and the letter goes on, and it concludes with just to speak to the import of some of these days. This was the best day of my. Yesterday was the best day of my life. So that concludes our presentation. So we'd like to say thank you. Kujanamik.
Yawin Jehoa.
Merci, miigwech.
And we'll take any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to open that up to comments and questions. I think I'll start with Trustee Garrow. If you have any comments you'd like to make.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, through you, Chair. It's very interesting to note how this is really taken off, I guess, and where students are becoming much more entrenched. A lot of times I've been asked the question, why do this? This is all in the past. But my quick response, of course, is what's happening now is that it isn't in the past. It's still happening. We still have policies that have been there since colonization, and they continue to be. But students are becoming more and more aware of what it is to have a reservation, to have a status card, to have a Department of Indigenous Affairs and Northern Development. And it's somewhat interesting to hear from the youth that things are changing, and they're changing for the better. They're changing not only for Indigenous students, Indigenous people, their parents and that, but it's also a change, I think, that is really important for all of Canada. And thank you for this. We are continually work through OPSPA with the ministry on their curriculum project, and hopefully, I was hoping that there would be changes in the curriculum that would come about this coming September, but it looks like it's going to be September 18th. But it is happening. So when I look at the figures of the number of students that are taking credits for Indigenous studies, it's really, to me, it's saying we're doing the right thing. And because we don't have that many Indigenous students, I know that the numbers for self-declared is happening, and yet there are so many others that really have such a great interest in it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. Other comments or questions? Students?
Through you, Chair.
We'll go with Student Trustee Meyer first, and then Trustee Swanson.
So I was at the Bridgewood TRC Plus 2, and I just want to say thank you for putting that event on. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was just so proud of all the I-Lead students, as well as the two student senators, Danka and Isaac. I know them fairly well, so I was so proud to see them up there talking about everything and know how passionate they are, as we've had the conversations as well. But I think the passion through the student voice was so inspiring, and as you said, very powerful. And the student voice was so well represented at that event that I was just so happy to be there and seeing all this. And I think having the students speak was something so special to all the students around. The 5-6 students were there, and for seeing students talk to students, it kind of impacts students a little more. I find they get it more on a personal level, and I think they were impacted. And I think the best way to put it was exactly how Trustee Edwards ended with, yesterday is the best day of my life. And you just know how well that impacted. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Swan.
I just want to thank you for a very powerful presentation. And I just had a question in regards to, I know the Lambton-Kent Board is looking at in, I guess, 18 it is, to do English. And instead of teaching Shakespeare and Salinger, they're going to have Aboriginal or Indigenous, authors in the English literature. So instead of children or youth taking studies in Indigenous studies, when they're really pushing for credits, they can learn about this still through their English courses. And I'm just wondering if our board's looking in this direction through you, Superintendent.
Thank you.
Trustee Swan, Jim Palmer here. That's really exactly what we're doing with our pilot project. At Athens, for example, every grade 11 student took the Indigenous Voice course as their English course. So instead of, as you say, instead of taking Shakespeare and Salinger, we were studying First Nations, Michif, and Inuit authors, and studying them in the context of both an English course, but also in the context of understanding the First Nations, Michif, and Inuit peoples of Canada. We're in the we've just finished our 3rd year of doing that at Athens, where every grade 11 student takes that course instead of their English. And really, it's very well accepted by the students. We've got a bit of pushback in the first year, but now students, I think, really look forward to it and to the authentic experiences that people like Bill Montgomery bring to the program. They've had a chance to be involved in smudges and sweats and connecting to a number of things that are important to the First Nations, Michif, and Inuit people. And through those courses, like, we're a pretty small school at Athens, but through the course this year alone, just because they took the course, that grade 11 course, 3 kids self-identified as, I had a Cree grandmother. My grandparents were both Native. That kind of thing. So it is something that we're definitely moving towards, I think, in the board.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that was wonderful to hear.
Yeah, through you, Chair, I'll just add one more thing, is that we have actually, will be coming into, as Jim Palmer said, coming into our third year of the pilot, and 11 of our high schools are embarked with this, similar to what Landham Kent will be going into next year. And we've approached it through invitation because we think that we need to be able to support that and ensure that we have the Indigenous voices, the authentic voices, and are able to support that. So we'll have 11 of our high schools where the grade 11 courses will all be the MBE3 courses next year.
Thank you. Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. Having attended the TRC +2 at Duncan J, and listening to the students who spoke there, I can certainly attest to the advancement that I heard over some of the things that those students were doing. So that's really good. My question has to do with slides 10 and 11. Basically, where 69% of the students are on track to graduate within 4 years, and 52% of the students pass the OSSLT. How does that compare over the last 5 years, let's say? And what are we doing to try to make those two numbers more congruent?
Through you, Chair. The data that I present there right now is with our iLead students, and so we've actually collected it for just the last 2 years, so we don't have 5 years worth of this data that's presented here. And last year our data was at 67%, so we don't have enough data there we're just starting to track it to help to move on. So programs such as the Indigenous Studies programs within the high schools, helping with teachers with their learning. We're also looking at cultural camps and leadership camps that will continue through the summer. So we offer summer learning in many ways, and so are there programs that we can offer for our iLead students that way. So it is something that needs to be really thought about and respond to things to be tried, and understanding what might be making a difference in this way. With respect to the OSSLT, the 52%, again, this is something we're really working with our students, of helping our students and responding and bringing them into that learning, and what is that, how can we help? And bringing those sessions right at the very start of the year with this data, inviting them to bring their IEPs, inviting them to learn about that and themselves as learners, how to keep them for the well-being piece, but also themselves as learners. So how can we help with that?
Thank you.
And related to that, related to both post-high school graduate expectations and goal setting, we've been involved for several years with the Indigenous leaders in the Inspire program, which is a program that connects Indigenous students to post-secondary opportunities, especially at colleges and universities, and that's been a very effective program for our kids.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have to admit, I got a flashback when you did this. Back when I was a grade 1 student, the first time I got up in front of a group of people to speak, this poem I did was this one: where we walked to school each day, Indian children used to play. All across our native land where shops and houses stand. And I also remember studying Flint and Feather when I was in high school. I believe Pauline Johnson wrote that. But my question, through the chair, is this programming offered to all students? And secondly, it's 2 parts. Is it more prevalent in some areas of the board than others? Through the chair.
Through you, Chair, with respect to our Indigenous secondary credits, all of our secondary schools offer Indigenous secondary credits. Our CCVS offers language credits and has language labs. At Perth District High School, we are offering Algonquin labs in the evening, and we hope to bring that into continuing education program for next year. So all of our schools offer Indigenous studies at the secondary level. Within the elementary level, the Indigenous content is in the curriculum. We're continually working with our teachers and with our students of bringing that more into the forefront and helping teachers and students to see themselves reflected there.
Thank you, and just a great presentation. Just to move it along, we have one more comment from Trustee Partner.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment that I'm noticing in the schools that I visit on a regular basis that the Learning Commons are getting a lot more print material about stories and books on Indigenous peoples, and I find that those stories are amazing. I've read quite a few of them now, and I'm most impressed that I talk to the students, and they have good insight as to what's happening or what has happened in the past. So I think that your message is getting out there, and I'm very pleased to see that happening. Thank you.
For you, Chair, one more.
I'm going to let you go, but if I let you go, I have to let David McDonald go, so I'm going to let 2 of you to go, but I really mean it after that, okay?
No, I just want to thank you for Susan for the acknowledgement of traditional territory, because that's happening more and more throughout, at least throughout Ontario anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally.
Just a question of clarification.
Certainly.
We talked about 600, I think you said, Indigenous, self-identified Indigenous students. Not all Indigenous students are in the iLead program, is that correct?
Through you, Chair, the iLead program is for our secondary school students, and that's correct. Not all of our students, it's an invitational program, and not all of our students participate in that. It has grown, and one of the big changes that we're really seeing is our iLead students are asking for the iLead sessions. We used to have these at North Grenville Complex, and those students are asking and putting presentations, or not for presentations, but cases for them being offered within their own schools.
Just to follow up, so if iLead is not all of the Indigenous students, are we tracking all of the Indigenous students to understand how we're helping close the gap there as well? Because you mentioned about 50% of the iLead students. How many students are in iLead, I guess, is the question.
There are 120 students in iLead, and that's a really great question. And one of the board captures all kinds of different data, EQAO data, and with the startup of the Directors Indigenous Advisory Council, we can help to bring forward data similar to our SEAC, to bring the data first to our Indigenous Advisory Council and then out. So we haven't actually, we do capture different types of data within our board, but we actually haven't put it in types of graphs like this. We started this last year with really from the stories of our students and the mentoring and how could we support our students for the iLead students that were coming on the tracks for graduation, because we found that many of them were not on track, either year 4 or year 5, and so we really, this was the data that we captured.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank all of you for the leadership that you have given to this program and to our young people, and for giving them a voice. And I know there's, when we talk about the students speaking, there was two that I actually watched closely because I watched them last year and I watched them this year, and that's Isaac and Katie. And the growth in those two young people was amazing. The confidence, their voice is much stronger now, and they speak with passion. And I think that's a testament to what the work you're doing. Before you leave the table, though, Jim Palmer, you've worn many hats in this board. We've known you at this table doing many different roles. Every role that you've played has been in the service of the young people. And I want to thank you for the 35 years you have given us. We are going to miss you. You have touched many, many lives. And on behalf of all of those lives you touched, I want to say thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, moving to our next on the agenda is the International Education Update. And I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Mills and Matt Raby, the Executive Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to introduce Matt Raby, who's the Executive Director of the Upper Canada Léger Centre for Education and Training, hereafter known as UCLC. Matt has brought his team with him tonight in his leadership role with our international education program. So I'm going to ask Matt to introduce some of the staff that are with us tonight.
Great. Thank you, Tim. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the UCLC and UCDSB International Education Program team. Robert Robichaud, our Financial Coordinator. Christina Stewart, our Information Resources Coordinator and Administrative Assistant. And Ryan Groves, our Admissions Coordinator.
We didn't necessarily plan this tonight to follow Indigenous Ed, but when you think about what you just saw with equity, inclusion, how we're a board that all means all. You heard last board meeting the great work that's gone on with staff related to cultural awareness and cultural competency. That the international education program really falls right into, after hearing what Superintendent Edwards and her team were talking about with Indigenous Ed. So we want to provide you tonight with an update on the international education program in Upper Canada. UCLC leads the program, and it has been ongoing for over 10 years. We've seen significant growth in short stay and full semester students, and it's very evident in the last 5 years, so we'll highlight that within our presentation. So we'll give you an overview. We're going to provide the enrollment trends, talk about finances, and the benefits to the board, which are not just financial. We're in the midst of working on a strategic plan, and you'll remember, some of you trustees may remember from the last presentation, talking about a strategic review that we had completed, and then the road forward. In the international education program, a majority of our students are in homestay, and our providers, the Canada Homestay Network. We have about 300 students that are living with local families within communities. We have 21 of our high schools and 14 of our elementary schools that host international students throughout the year. All of the students receive an orientation when they come in. Not only a one-day orientation, but we have an app now developed for students on pre-arrival that they can do some orientation online. And there's a picture there of some of our students in Niagara Falls, but we organize a number of student trips and cultural experiences, not just outside the board, but we're proud to offer them inside the board on a seasonal basis, and many of our schools are doing their own, providing their own experiences for international students. For the present year, 178 short-term students, and those are students that are here for 1 month, or up to 3 months. 391 full semester or full year students, which is an ADE of just under 350. And I mentioned the number of elementary and secondary schools where their students are at. The first year, or the first day of the school year this year, we had close to 500 international students, counting short stay and long stay, in our schools. When you think about that, the average size of a high school, a secondary school in Upper Canada is about 350. So that, when really it's the size of maybe a large Upper Canada school at the beginning of the school year. The enrollment trends, so the total there for 16-17, you'll see is pushing towards the 600 mark for total students, including short-term and long-term. The full semester or full year students for 15-16 and 16-17, I want to highlight that you'll see a bit of a dip. We are being conservative, so we anticipate that it's going to go up. In fact, in the last 24 hours, we've had 20 applications from 7 different countries to come to Upper Canada next year. So we could adjust that, but we are being conservative. And like most programs, the source countries, the most popular is definitely China. But we have diversity as one of our goals for sure, to diversify the host, or the source countries, rather. Of note, in terms of the students from Asia, particularly China, those students usually come for 2 or 3 years. They are coming to graduate, and they will generally stay in Canada and go on to college or university. So their life plan is to come to Canada to graduate from post-secondary and perhaps stay, become residents, and live. That's a brief overview of the revenues and expenses in the program. Of course, tuition revenue would be the biggest revenue generator, just over $5 million. The expenses, like in regular day school and the operation of our board, the biggest expense would be staff, with a net benefit or contribution to Upper Canada of almost $900,000. And that breaks the net benefits down a little bit further. And to highlight there, in terms of employment or jobs, 16 teaching positions, 13 ELL instructors, 14 sections of ESL, which would be almost 2.5 teachers. And the program staff you see at the back, including 2 positions we fund through Superintendent Allen's curriculum program, Teaching for Learning, 2 program resource teachers and ELL. So I'm going to turn it over now to Matt.
So as Tim alluded to, many of you may remember that last time we were here providing an update at this table in May of 2015, we were reporting on a strategic review that had been conducted in September, beginning in September 2014. So through that strategic review, 4 goals were recommended and brought forward, and I'll be happy to report tremendous gains towards each of these goals, and we'll provide a brief update on the work that's been completed and achievements made related to each of these goals. So one of the goals was to increase student enrollment and diversity. And I'm happy to report that since 2014, we have increased current international student enrollment at the UCDSB of over 20%. You saw those numbers that we were reporting, and we do expect that those will continue to increase as we get near to September of the next school year and as we grow for the future. We've welcomed students from more than 10 new countries since 2014. And the diversity in terms of the percentage of students that are coming from any one source country has increased by almost 15% as we've continued to grow. So I think that speaks well to the increasing profile of the UCDSB around the world, the increased partnerships that we've developed, and the increased demand in many different countries for the great educational opportunities that we offer. Another goal was to build a sustainable and efficient management and operations infrastructure, both within UCLC and within the UCDSB, specific to the supports available for international students. So you can see on the slide we've had some realignment of UCLC staffing specific to the international education program. We've reduced staff from 6 full-time equivalent to 3 full-time equivalent, which has helped us to gain efficiencies, but has also helped us to identify gaps in our current programming and current staffing needs, which will help us move forward in a continued and efficient way. And we are looking at adding staff to positions that had existed previously and will continue to help our program grow and thrive and serve our students well. We've also really worked to improve some of our processes, working within the UCDSB with schools, departments, and also with some of our third-party service providers. So, for example, we've worked extensively with the ESL learning partners at the board to really understand how we can support students better, both throughout their time registered with us, but also in advance of arrival, so we can prepare with expectations for the students and help them prepare as they embark on this wonderful journey here in Canada. We've also really improved the timing of our registrations to schools, which has helped with placing students in appropriate courses and appropriate pathways for their previous academic experiences, as well as their current level of English language proficiency. And we've worked extensively with existing partners such as the Canada Homestay Network to improve communication and our processes, all in the interest of better serving our students and helping to support their success within the UCDSB and in the communities in which they live. We've also worked diligently with our partner agencies from around the world, who are oftentimes the first point of contact with these students before they come to Canada, to improve the training we provide to these agencies, as we know that they will be great influencers of the students' expectations, their preparation, and overall the experience, and also the communication with the students' natural parents as well. Our third goal was to expand and enhance program options, and we certainly do have many opportunities moving forward for such an ambitious goal, but we have achieved some significant things within the last couple of years. We've worked, and we are working with TR Leger to create online courses that are being developed to be offered anywhere in the world at any time, which could give wonderful learning opportunities, not only for international students, but potentially for domestic UCDSB students who may be traveling or having different life circumstances that take them other areas geographically. We've significantly increased our trips and activities program, which we see as an important offering for students to ensure that the cultural experiences and the connections with our local communities are very strong, and that the opportunities to engage in some of these very wonderful activities are there for all students and their host families as well. So we offer 5 different trips to cities outside of the Upper Canada District School Board, including seeing a professional hockey game, seeing a professional MLS soccer game, and experiencing Montreal and some parts of Quebec, visiting to Niagara Falls, going shopping in Ottawa before Christmas, and an end of year wrap up kind of celebration, going to Canada's Wonderland for our students. As well, we've implemented monthly homestay activities in which we invite host families to come with their students, and we generally tend to or try to focus these activities around community-based learning that will give a traditionally Canadian cultural experience, such as visiting a sugar bush, having a Halloween party, visiting a light at night at the Upper Canada Village, and so forth. And so these activities have been an excellent opportunity for students to engage in the community and to really connect these homestay host families with and amongst each other, as well as with the students that they host. Our final goal is to expand global partnerships for international and Canadian students. And proud to say that we have now established partnership agreements with over 150 agencies throughout the world. Those would be represented actually in 30 different countries, and those are agencies that we are in consistent communication with to help prepare students and hopefully to attract students to the wonderful opportunities we can offer here in Upper Canada. We have 5 new school partnerships that have been established since 2014, which represent increased enrollment and opportunities for future programming. Much like our overall programming in international education at this time, these new school partnerships are focused at the moment on attracting students to come to attend our local schools and live in our local communities, but they do hold so much potential and promise for expanded operations and future opportunities for the UCDSB and most importantly for our students. So looking forward, the Upper Canada Leger Centre is currently developing a strategic plan for the organization, and this will include a strategic plan specifically targeted towards the Upper Canada District School Board International Education Program. This will guide us for the next 3 to 5 years and will provide specific actions and related measurable and time-oriented goals. This strategic plan, specific to international education, will be focused on some of the learning that we gained through our 2014 strategic review, an online-based survey that was sent to domestic and international students, UCDSB staff, homestay families, homestay managers, partners abroad, and administrators at local schools and within the UCDSB. There's also a big component of this will be the Ontario Ministry of Education's International Education Strategy, which was launched in May of 2015, and we have provided a link there where it can be downloaded at any time. And we also held a strategic planning session specific to international education on May the 8th, which provided another opportunity to gather feedback and inform us for building the strategic plan moving forward. So I'm sure that you can gain the general sense from our presentation that the UCDSB is very well positioned to build upon its leadership role amongst Canadian public schools and Ontario public schools, especially those in non-urban communities such as the geographic focus that we serve. We have a strong market demand across international markets, and Canada is growing as a brand for sure, and Upper Canada is a prime destination and has the opportunity to take advantage of this brand that's building nationally, provincially, and locally as we move forward. And that demand is expected to continue, and there is forecasted growth across the country, across the province, and locally. There's also opportunity to diversify programming, to expand beyond welcoming fee-paying students and broaden the reach and impact of international education across the UCDSB through a number of different channels. So we've provided a few photos here. These are really what we talk about net benefits. This is the net benefit, I think. Seeing students enjoying living and learning in Upper Canada. And it really is an honor to be working for these students that bring the world to our local schools and our local communities.
Just to conclude, there are many benefits to the international education program in Upper Canada. I mentioned it builds cultural awareness among students and staff, our reputation as a world-class organization. It does counter effects of declining enrollment and provides employment and economic benefits to Upper Canada and school communities. Just in conclusion, I want to mention that earlier this month at Canadian Association of Public Schools International, where Matt and I were there amongst over 100 school boards that have programs, we're recognized there, and Matt did a presentation there of some great things that are going on in our board, and he's helping as part of the committee to lead an international education one-day or two-day actual activity through the ministry in Toronto in June, and also doing a presentation there. So I want to thank Matt for his leadership and the team in the back, and we'll welcome any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you. I will open it up to comments or questions. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Thank you. Two questions actually. Has the weakened Canadian dollar affected your enrollments in any form? Through the chair.
Through you, Chair, based on the 20 applications yesterday, I mean, we can't predict, but what I would say is that if you look in the news and look at the trends recently based on world events as well as the Canadian dollar, that we would anticipate, we anticipated, and have been more applications in the last 3 months.
Yeah, and second question, how do you market? This is a big program. How do you, because I didn't see anything in your budget for marketing. Through the chair again.
Sure. Through you, Chair. Through our partners in existing countries, that would be kind of where a lot of our marketing efforts would be. So there are different industry events, different publications where we'll connect with these agencies who are specialized in providing educational opportunities for students from their home country abroad. And so we try to develop relationships with those agencies, provide training to help them understand the great opportunities that we have here, the programming that we have in place for students, and we work closely with them to support their marketing initiatives. We do have a social marketing presence with more than 10,000 likes on our Facebook page specific to the International Education Program. We have an established website, a complement of brochures and videos. So we're certainly not doing this on no budget at all. And when we do look at the financial impact slide, there is a program administration and recruitment figure, in which the marketing budget would be included.
Trustee, thank you. Got distracted there for a second. Trustee Armour.
Thank you for your presentation. I think we need to celebrate what we do here at Upper Canada District School Board, and you guys do a great job of that internationally, so thank you. Just a point of clarification for myself. I enjoyed your presentation last year. I like it even better this year. Maybe you could highlight for me on your financial numbers why we don't include the 178 short-term students in your expenses. Or am I off on that one? Do we just absorb those into our regular budget?
Sure, it's through your chair. We include those as a net of revenue minus expenses. I suppose if that would be a preferred means of reporting, we could certainly report on those expenses, but it is a program that we analyze and look at, more of the net benefit of that short-term program.
Okay. Yeah. Through you, Chair.
Certainly.
Just also there, in terms of our marketing and recruitment, we do generate revenue for the short-term programs, and that assists us for the marketing and recruitment. So it goes back in, a lot of it goes back in terms of marketing and recruitment. Okay. So we're not spending more dollars on anything related to marketing and recruitment outside of the international education revenue we're generating.
Thank you. Trustee Cartner.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, question for either Superintendent Mills or for Matthew. The countries that are sending, or the families that are coming from certain countries to Upper Canada, are those countries trying to get our students to go there? Is there any movement from any of the countries trying to recruit our kids?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I think there is significant interest from a number of these countries that we're active in recruiting students from, to also see Canadian students going abroad, and many of them with significant infrastructure already in place to host students. So I know that within the Ontario Ministry of Education strategy for international education, there is a focus on providing more opportunities for students and teachers to have these experiences abroad. And hopefully that's something that through the UCDSB we can offer more, and on a basis that would make it accessible for all.
Thank you.
Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I just two pieces around the marketing and recruitment, and you mentioned it throughout the presentation on the partnerships that you have with schools. And I think a majority of your success is around the partnerships that you're able to establish with schools, primarily in China, that helps with that marketing and recruitment. It's kind of a bigger bang for your buck when you can get that partnership. Can you explain that a little bit more in detail on how you go about getting those partnerships and how you get those students to engage with Upper Canada?
Absolutely. Through you, Chair. So these partnerships that we speak about often, or most are, in a model of what we would call a 2+2 or 1+2. So they would start with the student attending the school in China for as an example, for 1 year or 2 years for grade 9 and 10, or for grade 10, and then coming to Upper Canada to complete their secondary school studies in grade 11 and 12. So this gives us the opportunity to have a direct impact on the students' education prior to Canada, their daily school life during those grade 9 and or 10 years, to prepare them better for the experience. But it also, as you mentioned, provides us an opportunity to get a bang for our buck in terms of the marketing and the outreach and recruitment of students in that way, because these partner schools oftentimes will have an existing student population who are looking for international opportunities. They have existing relationships and trust built with the parents, so they're in a prime position to help us with communicating our message and the opportunities that we can offer. And they are also very well established in their local communities as well, again, giving that opportunity to build from a place of prestige and trust through our partners and for our marketing purposes.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. So with your partnership that you're looking for with, I'm not sure if you said it was partnership, but you're working collaboratively with TR Léger around the online learning. Do you see that as an overall benefit as well in that relationship that you have with some of those established partnerships in China for those students in grade 9 and 10 to be able to, whether it be reach ahead or at least have some sort of a idea of what the curriculum might look like before they engage with UCLC?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, Ministry of Education rules state that we cannot offer credits offshore unless students are already registered with us, and when we are students here, and then we could offer an online course in the summer. But we're anticipating, looking towards the future, that perhaps that moratorium will be lifted. So since 2005, there's been a moratorium in Ontario of opening a school abroad and offering credit. And there is, you may have seen in the news recently that there's a concern about inspections of those schools and the validity of some of the schools offshore. But we're preparing while we're working with TR Léger to develop courses for online. It also can have a benefit for our students, for our regular students, not international students. So it's a dual role there.
Thank you. Student Trustee Mara.
Through you, Chair. So I had a question about the online courses as well, and David kind of took my question, so I'm going to reword it a bit differently. But so you mentioned how the online course would be offered to the international students, so those who wouldn't live in Canada, correct?
Through you, Chair. Students would already have to be registered with us and have an OEN number, and we would have to have, seen them as a student, and then we would have to validate through their home school if they were going to take that course. We would not just offer it to anybody we hadn't seen.
So if a student was registered with Upper Canada District School Board and was attending the school, like a high school per se, but then was traveling abroad for, say, like family purposes or stuff like that, would they still be able to access the online course and do their online courses while they're, say, like in Germany or Australia or something like that? Would they be able to access that course, or is that not accessible outside?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So if I'll give you an example, if it was a student that was on an exchange that was living abroad, even if you went abroad. You could access an online course and complete it through us. Yeah. But you would have to be registered with us as a student. Right.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions, Trustee McAllister?
I want to commend you on the success of the program and the work that you're doing, as well as the strategic planning day that I attended last month.
Thank you.
Which was extremely well done and well facilitated. My question is this: what is, if I were to ask you, what is the one limiting factor which impedes the growth of the program?
I hope we agree.
Do we have a moment to huddle? Well, through you, Chair, I'll let Tim answer. Because if we don't agree.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The one factor that impedes us internally would be homestay. And so we're continually working with our homestay provider, which is Canada Homestay Network, but we also do have some agencies that are finding their own homestays on their own. And we have interest from a partner that we're working with as well that's actually purchased a dorm, something they're turning into a dorm east of Cornwall, to provide that. But I would say homestay. That's internally. Externally, in terms of our what's impeding us, is I think we need to be more going out to the students a little more and getting our students out. In order to, if we're going to call ourselves a true international program, it would be great to have our students from Upper Canada experience abroad, whether it's with our school partners or otherwise. And I'll further that by saying that it's very common for students that are in college or university, Canadian students, to go abroad for a semester or a full year. It is not common at all for high school students to go abroad for a semester or a year, unlike other countries that are coming into Canada, where they will often come into Canada for a semester or a year when they're in high school and then go back home and do their university, full university in home country. So it's a different age.
Certainly.
Further to that question, are we working with the Economic Development and Tourism departments of our municipal partners to develop awareness of the existence of the program, the value of the program, and the perhaps information about the revenue to individual families that could be incurred?
Through you, Chair. We have been. I think we could be doing a better job of that, and I think there lies greater opportunity for us to engage more with economic development offices. I received an invitation today, though, to highlight some of the great work that's been done through such partnerships. The City of Brockville, through our discussions with the Economic Development Office and the Mayor's Office, have developed an International Student Welcome Day. So all of our students that are attending school here in the City of Brockville, as well as students from Fulford Academy and St. Lawrence College, international students, will attend an event and be greeted and formally welcomed by the Mayor of the City of Brockville. So that's an opportunity of some of the great work that can be done through these partnerships. And as you mentioned, I think we do have opportunities to really share the good news story of the economic development impact that we're having, and hope maybe even stimulate some increased interest in homestay hosting opportunities too.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Trustee Garrow.
Yeah, Superintendent Mills, I think there's probably an opportunity for, I guess, advancing this or marketing this, and it could be through Jerry Benson's committee, on the Cornwall University project. I'm going to talk to Jerry this week, and maybe, if I can, just speak to this, and as well as also to the previous presentation on Indigenous education, or the people that are around that table, who, of course, in some areas are looked at as movers and shakers. So I'll email you on how Jerry would feel about that to be placed on the agenda. I think the meeting is this Monday.
Yeah. Through you, Chair, Trustee Garrow. So just for the other trustees, what he's referencing there is the University Steering Committee for the City of Cornwall, which includes the counties and Akwesasne at the table. I have met actually with Mr. Benson 3 or 4 times while the university program was trying to get off the ground.
Right.
But it would be worth, there is a meeting on Monday, and it would be well worth it to bring it up to the committee again. Thank you.
Yeah, because the mayors are all there, and also, and plus you do have people from St. Lawrence College, St. Lawrence River Institute, and some corporate leaders too.
Thank you, Trustee Garrow. Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Superintendent Mills, thank you for the direction that you help in terms of the program. Matt, it's interesting to watch you. We've watched you grow in this role. You know, I don't want to say you came to us as a young buck, but what I'm saying is you came to us new to the role, and it's been very interesting to watch you grow in your confidence and in your leadership. But you know, leadership is nothing without a good team. And I look at the team at the back, and I know there's many others. And to be able to have people want to come here comes from leadership, and it comes from the team. So on behalf of the board, thank you very much for everything you're doing for international students. You make us look good, and you provide a great learning experience for them. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, moving on. No night would be complete without Superintendent Barkley. And this is one of our major presentations, not that the other ones were not, but this is looking at our proposed budget. So I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Barkley, and you also have Carol McEwen and Michael, you're here. We should get you folks on the agenda much earlier, but anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Barkley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I always have my supportive team here at the table, and every day of the week, too. We are pleased to be able to bring to you this evening the proposed 17-18 budget for the Board of Trustees deliberation. Tonight's presentation is the fourth in a series of budget-related reports that have been shared with trustees, each one building on the previous and providing budget information as it became available, and while the proposed budget was being developed behind the scenes. Despite the delayed release of the GSNs and the budget forms, and the added factor this year of the centrally negotiated collective agreement extension agreements, the finance team has now consolidated the various expense budget submissions of all of our budget owners compared to all of the revenues, incorporated the budgets of our related parties, such as the Upper Canada Leger Centre, and now has a clearer picture of the proposed overall budget for 17-18. Although there was a very early view of a projected overall pressure of $1.6 million, $1 million of that being an enrollment contingency, and the senior team, as you know, prepared for that by developing budget considerations for expense reductions. The actual gap was less than originally thought, mostly due to additional funding that could not have been anticipated back in January when the original gap was calculated. This is not to say that there still weren't pockets of budget pressure stemming from funding changes and general enrollment decline. However, for the organization as a whole, the resulting bottom line is favorable. The proposed budget is balanced and in fact reflects a small operating surplus at this point for ministry compliance purposes of approximately $100,000. During this year's budget discussions, trustees commented on the need for a contingency. As we go through the actual presentation, trustees will hear that there are contingencies built into the budget, particularly in the form of conservative assumptions and estimates, which administration views as sufficient and responsible in protecting against potential fluctuations in the actual experience of the upcoming fiscal year. As every year, this is an operational plan, and as the next school year unfolds and as new information comes to light, adjustments will be required, always with student learning as a priority and our mission of preparing all students for a successful life. I also want to point out that this proposed budget, if approved by the Board of Trustees, would continue this district's positive progress towards meeting and in fact exceeding the targets of its multi-year financial plan
which was set only 2 years ago in June of 2015. Based on the 2016-17, so this year's financial forecast number 2, and this proposed budget, Upper Canada is projected to reach an accumulated surplus level available for compliance, less commitments, of $7.5 million, which is $1.5 million greater than the targeted $6 million, which is the minimum level that the ministry wants to see for our board. And we'll look at this nearer the end of the presentation. Trustees also have in their agendas a full detailed package that includes a number of schedules that provide more specifics than I will go through here this evening, but do form the basis for the presentation. Comparisons of the proposed original budget for 17-18 to the approved original budget of 16-17, which this board approved last June, are provided in the package as well, and you'll see those tonight, along with variance explanations. So I'll now take you through the presentation. We start, as usual, with where we are in the financial cycle, as highlighted by the pink oval that you see there, and which also indicates that the 17-18 budget is due to the Ministry of Education by the 30th of June. So Chair McMillan mentioned my colleagues behind me, so I would like to, at this point, recognize and commend the financial team, the two here, as well as others, all of whom I'm very proud for having this budget ready for this particular meeting. The financial cycle you see shows that they did this even though they just completed and submitted to the ministry the 7-month report, which is not something that we bring to the board table, but is in essence a mini year-end for the province of Ontario. As well, they've been preparing for the development of financial forecast number 3, which will come to the board at the second meeting in June. I'd like to focus on assumptions and notes related to this budget, just to kind of set the context within which the budget has been developed and the approach taken. As is our practice, and which is also an example of conservative estimates and built-in contingencies, the budget at this time reflects only announced grants with confirmed dollar values for our board. There are a couple of examples that I can share of revenue that has not been confirmed by the ministry, so to be prudent, we have not included those revenues in the budget. Firstly, the ministry has stated that there will be early years funding. However, the amount for Upper Canada has not been confirmed. Once that is confirmed, it will be included as revenue and applied against existing expenses in the budget. In this case, it would pay for half of our early years lead salary. Another example, which has not been announced, is the potential continuation of the Teaching and Learning Fund. That is funding that the ministry has funded via the Council of Directors of Education for the past 3 years. It is thought that there will be another round of funding. There is some talk to that effect. However, nothing has been announced nor confirmed, so it has not been reflected in the budget. Those two examples alone, based on historical funding amounts, total about $500,000 and would aid in funding existing budgeted expenses. Another important point is that the draft budget, unlike when we calculated the gap, this budget is now based upon updated projected enrollment as developed by our planning department April 7th. As already mentioned in the opening comments, and this is not a new practice, the revenue and expense estimates are conservative in order to protect against potential variability in budget assumptions. An example I'll use for that is the move to the Employee Life and Health Trust, which for 3 of our employee groups, the transition dates are yet to be confirmed. So we needed to estimate for how long the premiums for those employees would be at the board's cost under our current insurer. As well, we have done our usual spring staffing to meet compliance requirements while allowing for any necessary adjustments in the fall, depending upon where the students arrive in September. The fourth point relates to the extension agreements. The Local Priorities Fund, which is a component of the negotiated extension agreements, and which Carol described at the last board meeting as being under review, is still under review. Administration continues to dialogue with our unions and federations, as is required, to determine the application of the $3.3 million. So at this time, the draft budget reflects expenses equal to that $3.3 million, with a zero bottom line impact until the use of that funding can be confirmed. So in summary, on the assumptions, there are contingencies or opportunities within the budget in the areas of anticipated funding, expense estimates, and particularly with respect to the Local Priorities Fund. Moving to projected enrollment. Now, this is the same slide that was shared at the last meeting. And it's important to point out that now that we start to look at numbers, we are comparing projected for 17-18, in this case enrollment, as updated April 7th, as I said, to the original projected enrollment that informed the approved 16-17 budget. These enrollment figures that you see reflect both pupils of the board upon which the grants are based, as well as tuition fee paying students. You will notice on the secondary row the demographic impact continuing there in our secondary panel, with the decline being in our pupils of the board, while the elementary line has stabilized and in fact is projected to show a small increase. The adult and continuing ed or other enrollment remains projected to be steady. So now we'll look at the revenue, or projected revenue for 17-18, again compared to 16-17. Trustees saw this information on May 10th, but in a more summarized format, with the important messaging that the $9.4 million total that you see at the bottom right-hand corner is not necessarily a windfall, although there were some positive components within the GSN announcement. So the first row, the ministry grant allocations, or I'll call them GSNs, shows a net increase of $7.3 million, which is comprised of both grant increases and decreases. And as was explained by Carol last time, three of the significant increases in that line are basically money in and money out. The negotiated 1.5% salary grid increases will be received and will fund the payroll for those employees. Also, funds to make one-time lump sum payments to employees for PD purposes are reflected in that revenue and will be in turn paid out to employees. And the Employee Life and Health Trust flow-through dollars are also on that line, where we receive money from the ministry and in turn we will remit that money to the trusts. So the three of those items alone total $6.3 million. As well, a significant portion of the increase is the $3.3 million that I talked about, the Local Priorities Fund that is being discussed. A healthy increase in Indigenous Studies credits, as you heard about earlier this evening, projected right now for 17-18 at $1 million. Some other positives that we've seen before in GSN announcements: an increase in transportation for cost update purposes, about $400,000, provided we do not have a surplus in transportation, and $800,000 of funding to assist with managing increases in commodity prices. Another significant item, and although this board is already in compliance with elementary class size requirements, we will still receive an incremental for 17-18 $700,000 for that purpose. So at the same time as there are many positives, there are also reduced grants, which is hard to tell when you look at a $7 million positive number. But examples, of course, being the Pupil Foundation grant goes down because of our secondary enrollment decline. The last year of what you've heard for several years now, the phased-in special education grant reduction, and of course the impact of the school board efficiencies and modernization phase-in, and school closures, lowering the level of our school ops and maintenance funding. So moving on to provincial grants, others, and I know we went through the details, so I didn't bring those here tonight. Shows a slight decrease at this time versus the same time last year, $300,000, due mainly to some historical grants that I spoke about, not having yet been confirmed for 17-18. An increase in First Nations projected enrollment accounts for the increase in federal fees, $295,000. Investment income, we always project our bank balances for the year and therefore derive what we expect our investment income to be. Next row is revenue from our coterminous English coterminous board for the shared use of the General Vanier site. And then fees and revenues from other sources, including Upper Canada Learning Center and Champions for Kids. There's also in there some money from the ministry for an additional secondment and some reimbursement of both secondments and union release time, which of course will be at increased salary rates, so you'll see an increase in those values. Deferred capital contributions is simply bringing revenue in that was previously deferred or set aside to match the estimated depreciation of our supported assets. So the amount that is budgeted is based on the planned capital spending for the year. As well, in this particular year, 17-18, we will begin the depreciation, it sounds strange to say, but of our new elementary school in Kempville, which is planned to open during the year. And finally, school-generated funds predicts a very slight increase in fundraising revenue. So you see the total revenue change, again comparing original budget to original budget of the previous year. You see that $9.4 million increase. So we'll move to expenses and try to put that into perspective. So generally speaking, since such a large portion, probably 75 to 80% of our operating budget relates to employee costs, the negotiated and funded increases in salaries, and then the associated benefits, pension costs, et cetera, that go along with that, at least for OMERS employees, have a significant impact on the expenses. So you see in that being particularly evident in the instruction line, where you see an increase of $9 million. Because that line in particular is heavily weighted with staff costs. It reflects salary and benefit costs for teachers, EAs, principals, vice principals, school office staff, and any other salaries, both permanent and casual, considered by the ministry to be directly connected with instruction. Also of note is an increase in that line in the number of educational assistants planned for 17-18, elementary supervision costs, ITS contractual service obligation costs, and of course that additional secondment to the ministry, for which we would be reimbursed. Now, not unlike the revenue in that line, there are also cost reductions embedded within that line. One of the most notable being our continued work by our HR department to adjust our school office staffing levels, being done through attrition, and with the objective of gradually moving us closer to the number of funded positions, especially at the secondary panel. Moving to the administration and governance line, we see an increase there, again, attributable mainly to the funded salary increases and any grid movements that may occur in admin departments. The transportation line shows the 2% cost update increase that I've already talked about. Moving to pupil accommodation, you'll see a very small decrease in expense. This is deceiving in that it is really comprised of increased expenses. Just like the other departments that have salaries, there are negotiated increases for salaries and the corresponding benefit costs that go along with that for folks in the facilities department. But there are also significant decreases within that line to adjust to the loss of the top-up funding for the full implementation of the new criteria under the SBEM, or the School Board Efficiencies and Modernization, and also as a result of our upcoming school closures. Other non-operating shows a minimal change, and the amortization expense shows an increase, again due to higher planned capital spending this upcoming year, with almost all of that offset by the deferred capital contribution revenue that we saw in the previous slide. Lastly, on this side, a small decrease in the spending of school-generated funds, which includes field trips and excursions projected for 17-18. We saw a comparable decrease on the revenue slide for that category. So overall, when we compare revenue to expenses, we see a significant increase in planned expenses, almost $1.8 million greater than the increase in revenue. You will see in the next couple of slides that planned special education spending is the main reason for this difference. The bottom line that you're seeing on this slide, the second row from the right, or second column I should say, from the right, of $4 million is an in-year surplus that would be the traditional surplus under the accounting view, if you would say, and is before the ministry required adjustments to both revenue and expense for compliance purposes. So I wanted to focus a bit, kind of in the same vein as Carol described when she presented the board with what we were calling the management perspective of the funding at the last board meeting. This slide is to emphasize that there are significant funding pressures or budget pressures that will be experienced in 17-18. And as trustees know, both special education and school ops and maintenance have been the areas most impacted by these formula changes, which have been nicely phased in over several years. Because the positive benchmark changes for these two streams of revenue and the other slides camouflage the impact of the formula changes, the underlying losses have been segregated here to reveal what are really permanent reductions in the baseline funding for those two areas. The special education, I'm using the old term, high needs funding, down $1 million, very close to what finance had estimated. I believe we estimated $1.1 million for the change from 16-17 to 17-18. But at the same time, budgeted expenses are proposed to increase in special education versus the year that we're in. School ops has experienced another $1.6 million reduction in funding, for which they have adjusted their planned expenses, as they have done in other years, in order to stay within the funding pot. So despite the favorable increase in revenue generally for the board, it's just to point out that there are specific pressures contained within for certain departments. Moving to special education, again, this has been our practice to share information separately on special education. For one reason, because there have been significant reductions in that area. We're showing this, albeit at a high level. There are more details within the budget package. The slide would imply that the change in revenue of $221,000 is not material. However, like other parts of the board's budget where salaries make up a large portion of the budget and the expense, the same is true for special education, where there are increases in benchmarks or funding benchmarks for salaries and the associated benefits, which in turn are paid out to employees and are reflected in the total expense line. There are also increases in SIA and Section 23 revenue that have offsetting expenses for the most part after a board-paid deductible. However, as we talked about in the previous slide, there is a significant reduction in the high needs or the differentiated special education needs amount, funding for special education. And at the same time, there is a planned increased spending for 17-18, mostly in the areas of educational assistant staffing, where there will be the equivalent of 57 more EAs in our schools at the beginning of September versus the 16-17 original budget's staffing levels. Now, that is versus the original budget. I want to be clear about that. Versus the current level of staffing in our schools now, that would be the addition of about 20 educational assistants. As well, there's been a planned addition of 4 special education teachers, all of that resulting in a planned spend for special education for 17-18 in excess of the revenue by $5.2 million. In addition, it should be noted at this point that none of the local priorities funding has been reflected as special education. Moving to ministry compliance, as has been our focus, as opposed to the accounting view, which you've just seen. We see here the proposed budget, if it were to be approved, would result in an in-year surplus for compliance purposes of just a little less than $100,000. This number differs, of course, from that accounting surplus of $4 million, which we saw on an earlier slide. And the reason for the difference is due to the ministry's requirement to adjust revenue and expenses for compliance. And there are certain things that are excluded, certain things that are added. The prime example, as you've heard me talk about, is that funding of the retirement gratuity liability over the years. So that is what makes a significant change going from the $4 million to $100,000 surplus. The good news is that before looking at the compliance threshold, when you have a proposed surplus, that is considered balanced or compliant in the ministry's eyes. And as well, at this point with this proposed budget, we are compliant with in the admin and governance envelope. So the next 2 slides display the projected impact of this proposed budget on our accumulated surplus or deficit. In our case, we're at a surplus now. This is really the equity section I think we've talked about before of the board's balance sheet, and it's divided into 2 sections. This section, and I'm not going to go through every detail of the slide, but I will highlight some things. So this section is the portion that's available for compliance, and the next slide, which we will get to, is the portion that is unavailable for compliance since it has been externally appropriated by the Ministry of Education. So in this first slide, available for compliance, I would just draw your attention to the bottom of the chart, the bottom right-hand corner, where the projection is that we would have available for compliance $8.3 million at the end of August 31st, 2018, after taking into account the in-year surplus for compliance of approximately $100,000. On the next slide, I would highlight the very bottom of the chart again, where you will see the projected 17-18 in-year surplus of $4 million. So that's that $4 million from the accounting view that we saw earlier. But if you look up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 rows, you will see 3.8, almost 3.9 million was used to fund the retirement gratuity liability. So that is why when you move up from there, there's only a $100,000 surplus for compliance. But at the very bottom right-hand corner, the important number there is a projected $6.3 million in what is a growing and a positive equity position for the board. So we'll just move away. That has all been operating focused. When we talk about compliance, it's about the operating statement of the board. However, capital expenses form part of the board's approved budget as well. This list probably looks fairly similar to what Superintendent Hobbs provided at the last meeting. Many of the items are similar to past years, so I'm just going to highlight a few that I think are of note. The very top one, minor tangible capital assets, that's our movable capital assets versus the 16-17 original budget. There's a planned increase spend there, which is mainly attributable to technology purchases. And trustees may recall that last year when we had a long list of budget considerations for expense reductions, computer purchases was one of those items that was accepted as a consideration and was removed from the expense budget. So now that we are putting that back in for 17-18, that number is greater than it was last year at this time. You will see moving down to the new Kemptville Public School. I'm calling it that, new elementary school in Kemptville. I'm not sure what it will be called. Kemptville Public School, okay, it's been confirmed. $800,000 is the amount that is presently budgeted to be spent to complete that construction and the site work for that school. You'll notice as well school condition improvement. We talked about this, I believe, when we did the grants highlights. A large $19 million figure there, which is the planned spending, which is in line with the increased funding. A new grant for 17-18 is the greenhouse gas reduction, $800,000, which will be used towards the replacement, renewal, and installation of new energy-efficient building components. Interestingly enough, this is actually a grant where the ministry has said it may also be used for board administration buildings. So in the end, the planned capital expenses at this point for the year, $31,964,677, so almost $32 million. My presentations must be too long because I need a lot of water. Well, thanks. This looks a little fuzzy, maybe not to you. I hope you can see it. This is our multi-year financial plan. And I wanted to present this at the end, and particularly to focus on accumulated surplus. When I say accumulated surplus, I'm talking about the yellow horizontal bars and that green horizontal line. That green horizontal line, trustees may recall, at 2% of the board's operating allocation, or in our case, the $6 million mark, is the standard that the ministry uses to monitor the operating health of this particular board. It uses a similar approach, I expect, for other boards, but this is the value that it equates to for us. It represents accumulated surplus minus commitments and is intended to be enough to weather 2 successive years of, I'm calling them compliant deficits. So deficits, full deficits of $3 million in 2 years in a row. Not that we are planning for that to happen, but that is kind of the thinking behind the target of $6 million. You will see when the multi-year plan was created 2 years ago in June 2015. So if you look to that column, we had a plan that would have seen our equity growing, the orange bars, gradually through moving out of an in-year deficit mode, which we were in at that time, and achieving very small surpluses over time to ultimately reach the goal of $6 million accumulated surplus for compliance by 21-22. The plan was set during the 15-16 budget process, and as such, we had not at that point completed the 14-15 financial statements. The 14-15 year resulted in an in-year break-even result, although the original budget was a deficit budget. Those favorable results helped us to arrive at an accumulated surplus for compliance of $6.3 million. So at the end of that year, 14-15, the yellow bars, which are actuals, we were actually pierced that green target line. Moving then to the next year, 15-16, edged us up slightly to a $6.9 million level, and the projected 16-17 results have us reaching a $7.5 million level of accumulated surplus, $1.5 million above the target of $6 million, the ministry target of $6 million. So I want to just draw your attention to the pink oval on the graph, which shows the level at which we estimate we would be based on projected 16-17 results. Now, mind you, that's based on financial forecast number 2, and we need to develop forecast number 3. And the proposed 17-18 budget, that is $7.5 million, $4.1 million greater than the original plan. So when I talk about the original plan, I'm talking about the orange bar. The yellow bar is $4.1 million above that. So the proposed budget, if approved by the Board of Trustees, would result in an estimated $7.5 million accumulated surplus, essentially a buffer for 2.5 years of successive deficits. An undesirable but potential occurrence, not one that we certainly plan to undertake. With an accumulated surplus of that level, less commitments, the Ministry of Education, in their terminology, would assess Upper Canada as a low operating risk. So in conclusion, granted that there will inevitably be both opportunities and risks that will materialize to some degree over time, the proposed budget before you is based on management's best estimates at this point in time. That is actually, Mr. Chair, the end of the formal presentation. I'll turn it back to you for trustee questions.
Thank you very much. I will open the floor to comments and questions. No comments or questions?
Through you, Chair.
Yes, Trustee Swan, we'll go with you first, and then Trustee McDonald. Go ahead, Trustee Swan. Trustee Swan, go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'd just like to ask, through you, Chair, where in the budget line is the income that we're receiving from the on-site daycares in our schools?
I have to go way back. Goes ahead faster than it goes back.
We're getting to it. There we go.
Sorry. So I believe it's in fees and revenues from other sources. Checking with my team to make sure I'm right. So fees and revenues from other sources.
Okay, what slide number is that? 5.
Slide 5.
Trustee Swan's on slide 5.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I think this is a good presentation, and I think it's important for us to continue on the plan that we did establish. I see we have about 100,000. I'm not sure that that's the number that I'm completely comfortable with. However, my question is around, you have some details in slide 8 around the special education revenue less expense comparison. My question really relates to the headings that the ministry releases money to boards. So we receive special education grant, we receive People Foundation grant, we receive what's the other one I want to talk about? Transportation is one, but School Board Administration Governance Grant. Just examples of the grants that we do receive. In relation to the grants that we receive, where is the board in the spending of those particular grants? Can we identify, are we within limits of the funds that we receive within each category? Or are we overspent in some of those categories?
Through you, Chair. Certainly where we are required to spend a certain way, I'll give you an example being Board Admin and Governance, where we are not allowed to overspend that envelope. We stay within it. Our internal practice in terms of school ops and maintenance, although we're not necessarily required to live within that, we do, and that's an internal practice. Other grants where EPOs, where we have very prescribed uses of the funding and we have to report back, we spend those according to those plans. Transportation, we so far have stuck within transportation. We try to keep that isolated to transportation. Although if we had a surplus in transportation, it could fall into accumulated surplus and be used the next year or some other time for some other purpose. When we, within some of the grants, there are specific report backs or little envelopes within them. I think we talked last time about learning opportunities, where there's some enveloping within there that we must comply with. Special education is an area where unused funding in special education is carried forward to subsequent years and must be used for special education. But as you can see from this slide, this is an area where the last 2 or 3 years we have been spending more in special education than we receive in that pot. So where we can be specific, yes. Where we must be specific, we are. Where we can be specific, we are. But certainly there are some areas where the funding subsidizes another area.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
And I appreciate the fact that some is very sweatered, enveloped, whatever the ministry flavor of the day wording is. I guess my point is that if we have some discretion on where we spend, then we're making a decision to not spend in a particular area. So if we are receiving funding with a specific grant and we use those funds to offset overspending in another area, that's a conscious decision that we as a board are making in order to adjust those funds. When we look at it at a 350 million or whatever the final number is, 354 million, it doesn't show us that. And I think it's important for us to understand, if we are those stewards of the funds, we have to understand if we're getting funding for something and we're not spending it on that, where are we spending it, and what's the anticipated outcome by doing that. So, you know, what's the business case, I guess, of anything to be able to move the funds over and support a different allocation than what the ministry originally provided. I have a couple of other questions. Do you want me to let others go first? And then
Let's see if there are, and we'll come back to you. Are there any? Trustee Bill McPherson will be okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Certainly.
You can go ahead.
No, it's okay. We're going to give us a break.
Okay. Thank you. Through the chair. First off, a comment. I'm very hesitant on a budget surplus of less than $100,000. Need I remind us that we spent 10 times that amount last year meeting emerging needs. Now down to the questions. On slide number 5, under deferred capital contributions, last year it was 12 million. This year it's 14. Actually, last year it was almost 13 million. This year it's 14.5 million. Now, my assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that what we deferred last year we will be doing this year, and we're going to defer another $14.5 million until next year. Is that correct? No? I hope not.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is more of an accounting concept that I'll try to describe. So when we receive funding for capital projects and we complete that capital project, the funding is set aside or deferred, and that funding is brought into revenue on an annual basis over the life of the asset.
Okay.
As it depreciates. So to compare that 14 million to that 12.9, it's not that, you know, that you'll see the 14 next year, you know, necessarily. It's dependent upon what the planned capital spending is in the upcoming year. So in 17-18, we're fortunate to have a lot of capital funding. We're planning to spend a good chunk of it. And as a result, the revenue associated with that, or the funding that goes with it, will be deferred. And then we will bring it back into revenue to pay for the depreciation, if you will, over time.
Okay. One more question through. Under fees and revenues from other sources, how does Champions for Kids? I realize we have to account for it, but is it not a charity? It doesn't factor into general board revenue, does it? Or does it have to be accounted for somehow? Through the chair.
Through you, Chair. It is a charity. The Upper Canada District School Board is a charity. What the requirement here is because it's a party related to the Upper Canada District School Board, its statements have to be consolidated into the audited statements of the Upper Canada District School Board. There's certainly a separate ledger for Champions for Kids. It's not that it gets mixed up, but when we budget and when we forecast and when we do our audited financial statements, we consolidate those statements into the umbrella Upper Canada statements.
Thank you. Trustee Armour and then Trustee McDonald.
Just a quick question. I was just reading through your chair, through the notes. Assumption number 3. It says that revenue and expenses estimates are conservative with contingencies built in order to protect against potential variability in budget assumptions. Was that something you did, or the individual budget owners themselves did?
Through you, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Some of the amounts are estimated by finance. So I used the example of the Employee Health Trust. I use examples of teacher staffing as an example. We are conservative when we estimate those amounts. As far as budget owners are concerned, I think if they were prudent, they would have some sort of contingency built in for the unknown. I can't speak for the budget owners, but I could say that we as finance know of enough conservative estimates in there and opportunities for future funding to come that we feel there are built-in contingencies.
Supplementary. Through you, Chair, again. Just to reiterate Trustee McPherson's point, we did budget 10 times the amount last year. So I want to make sure that our estimates are actually conservative if we're going to leave that much on the table. So that was more a comment than anything else.
Sorry, I didn't hear. We budgeted 10 times?
The 100,000 we have left over, right? We budgeted over $1 million in surplus last year.
900,000. Yep.
So it's great that we have those assumptions, but I just want to make sure they're enough to contribute to that. That's all. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald.
So thank you. My next point then, it comes around a bit of the contingencies, but it's more around EPO grants. And so the numbers that are provided in the report tonight show us what we've received thus far, what's been announced to the Upper Canada Board thus far. We anticipate there will be further grants coming from the province. Do we have any indication of what those amounts might be in comparison to previous years, or at least what the ministry might have provided to us through some briefing information?
Through you, Chair, I'll try to answer this. I may need a little assistance from my budget manager because I didn't bring my list. I do know that the example of the early years lead, for example, the early years funding, we know that Upper Canada will receive funding. We just don't know the dollar amount yet. There were other EPOs. Michael, would you want to come up here?
Carol and Michael, do you want to join us at the table just in case there's a question? Carol, you can join us as well in case we want to nail you down on a question.
Because Michael knows every detail.
Certainly. So if you'd just join us, that would be great. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. There are some EPO grants that we've received in the past, which we understand will be continuing on in 17-18. A couple would be the Specialist High Skills Major. There's an EPO component that has not yet been announced to the various boards that are eligible for it. Equity and Inclusive Education, re-engagement for grade 12 and 12 plus. There are a couple of others that I don't recall off the top of my head, but that we will most likely be eligible as well in 17-18.
So a follow-up to that, are we thinking it's 100,000, 500,000, or $1 million? Kind of like Price is Right, higher or lower?
Most of them would probably be 100,000 or less, but it all depends. Some of them are application-based, such as the Specialist High Skills Major, so it depends upon the enrollment and the number of classes involved for that particular program that's funded by the ministry. Some of the initiatives are quite small, like the re-engagement 12th category, so that's not a lot of money. That would definitely be less than 100,000.
Follow up to that. So is it safe to assume that the work that would be tied to the EPO grants has already been included in the current budget? So if we get the EPO grants, we're going to do it. If we don't get the EPO grants, we're still going to do it?
I'll start, and Michael or Val may need to finish. So the example, the early years funding, yes, the expense is in there now for that in anticipation of the funding, which we think will be $80,000 to $90,000. The Teaching and Learning Fund, we don't have confirmation that we will get it, but talk among my peers is that we very well may. If we do, that would be about $300,000 that would be applied to existing expenses for computer purchases. So that totals almost $400,000. And I'll let Michael say if there are any more.
There's the Specialist High Skills Major now. What we have included in the budget is just the GSN portion at this particular point in time. As it's an application-based process, we're not sure what the final amount will be that the ministry will fund us for. So if they fund us for the full application amount, then we will add the incremental expense as well.
So let me rephrase that. If we didn't get the EPO fundings, would we change what we're doing based on the current budget? The EPO grants are going to be supplement to what we have. It doesn't mean we're going to do something in addition to if we get the EPO grants.
Through you, Chair. If the EPO grant is incremental and we have not yet put the expenses in the budget, then yes, we will add to our expenses, but we will add to our revenue, the net effect being 0.
Okay, I get
Like
that.
the Chisholm EPO is an example of that.
I still have trouble getting an answer. What's budgeted based on what we anticipate to get? Because if we don't get the EPO grants, does that mean we're going to be still performing everything that we anticipate? Or is there something that we're going to do extra if we get EPO grants? What I'm trying to grasp is that if the EPO grants come through, 300, 100, 400, 600, whatever the number is, then we have an opportunity to say that $600,000 now covers the expense that was allocated within our current budget. We can remove the $600,000 or whatever number it is that was allocated within the GSN funding that we did get, and we have a choice to make then on the $600,000 that was allocated during the budget process. So I'm trying to understand if we're getting money that we will do something different with, or are we getting money to supplement a current expense that we've already included?
Let the director start first, okay, and then we can continue.
Mr. Chair, through you, I understand the question, and I'm going to say that, well, it depends on the EPO grant. I'll give an example. So with the specialist high-skill majors, and actually for many of the EPO grants, they tend to be linked to provincial priorities that the province has set for school boards to engage in. For the specialist high skills major, an example of that is that the province has set a threshold of looking at boards offering 25% of their offerings would be based in specialist high skills majors by, I believe, 2020. The provincial level for high skills majors right now is at, I believe, 17 or 16%. Upper Canada is offering specialist high skills majors at 18%, so we're above the provincial average right now. If the EPO grants for a specialist high skills major didn't materialize in the way that we would hope, we would do one of three things. We would scale back based on what the provincial expectation would be incrementally for growing that rate versus our current rate. We would change our expectations, which is to say that however many applications we're making for specialist high skills majors, we may need to plot that differently over the course of the next 3 years. Or we would have to channel resources that we put aside for other measures if that was in fact one of our priorities. So I think if the question is, so what do we do if the money doesn't materialize, that would be one of the three steps that we would be at. I think that from our senior staff discussion, we're pretty clear about what the board has set as its strategic priorities for next year. And so the budget that we're bringing forward is with that fully in mind in terms of what's been set out under the crew focus, including the education and well-being sections of crew. And I'll turn it over to Superintendent Barclay to comment further.
Through you, Chair, I'll make another attempt on trying to answer the question. On the early years lead, we know we'll get the money, we just don't know how much. So if we do get that money, we already have the expense in. So let's say it's $90,000. We'll be in better shape by $90,000. If we get the teaching learning fund, let's say $300,000, we will be in better shape by $300,000 because we already have the $800,000 for CUP budgeted. If we don't get that $300,000, the $800,000 can be afforded within the current budget, but that would leave us with the $100,000 surplus. Apart from that, anything else related to EPOs, neither the revenue nor the expense is reflected in the budget.
Yes, sir.
So that does get to where I was trying to achieve. It's not so much that we are still going to do what we anticipated based on the budget, is that it may provide us some added security if we get EPO grants that have been budgeted for and we get additional funding. Then we can have a choice at that point to take that additional funding, use the EPO money as it's directed, but the funding that's been allocated within the budget, and use that to either offset or in your surplus or allocate it in a different way. And I think that's what we need to be aware of is if we have funding, how is it going to be utilized within the current year if it's already been in budget. So if we get the lottery, the money balls, whatever they are that come down, what is that going to do to help us within the current year? And I think that's an important piece as EPOs come out. We need to be made aware that if it's in addition to what we budgeted for, how are we going to use the money that was already allocated within the current budget? Can we reallocate it back into the in-year surplus as a board, or do we have other priorities that we need to address? I still have other questions, but I'll let the other trustees go on.
We will let other trustees go for a moment. Trustee John McAllister.
Could you refresh my memory with regard to the local priorities grant, which was reintroduced in the funding this year, correct? And is it an EPO or is it under GSNs?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it isn't there was a grant long ago called the Local Priorities Funding. It is not that grant. This is called the Local Priorities Fund that was part of the 2-year extension agreement negotiations. So it came out of the collective agreement negotiations.
So in effect, it's not.
And it's
doesn't reflect the local priority at all.
Well,
it's not disposable for us. It's
No.
tapped.
Through you, Chair, the use of those funds will be determined in consultation with our unions and federations. And that is the requirement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions before I turn it back to Trustee McDonald? Trustee Cram.
Through you, Chair. I'm thinking back to last year at this time when we went back to look at further things that we could remove from the budget to give us a surplus. We only have a $100,000 surplus coming out of this particular budget. Has senior admin considered going back to look at further things that they could do to increase that surplus at this point?
Through you, Chair. So since we estimated the gap in January, the senior team has been working on ideas, considerations that could be implemented to reduce the gap. We brought the list of considerations 2-3 meetings ago, I believe, 2 meetings ago. But that was on the basis of thinking that we would have that budget pressure. But then once the GSNs were announced and we calculated our revenue, mostly because of additional funding, we didn't have the gap that we thought we had. The director may want to add to that.
Mr. Chair, through you, the extension agreements that the province has provided us actually gives us contingency this year in terms of our staff, whereas we may have been in a position where we would had to have reduced staff. The extension agreements actually allow us to maintain levels at the current levels or even possibly higher depending on the labor group. So because of that, we're actually in a better position to be able to draw upon this budget because of that type of I guess labor agreement provision that allows us to not look at reductions, but instead to be maintaining a steady state in terms of our budget.
I'm still a little uncomfortable with only $100,000 in the surplus. And I know last year you went back and there was, I would almost say, major cuts that we had to get back to the $800,000 surplus that we did have. And if I'm doing my math right, it looks like if we did something like a 0.3% adjustment to our budget of 354 and change, we're going to be in that $800,000 to $1 million range of surplus that we probably may need. And I personally would be more comfortable with the figure that was up in that particular area. So,
Mr. Chair, through you, I would want to ask the board to consider the earlier conversation about slide number 3 and item number 3 about revenue and expense estimates are conservative and contingencies were built in. Staff took to heart the comments 2 meetings ago about when staff plans that we shouldn't be building contingencies upon contingencies. We heard that from the table here, and so as a result, the assumptions and notes is our effort to convey to the board that we understood where we were in a previous fiscal year. We also understood in an earlier conversation about the budget that we should not be going to a place where we have multiple layers of contingency that in the end means that we had rolled back or reduced in a fashion that we didn't require or was not required to. So staff has taken to heart those comments from an earlier meeting and believe that we are presenting a budget with some of those measures in mind.
Trustee McDonald.
Thank you, and I do want to pick up on that point about contingencies and contingencies upon contingencies. Herein lies the problem. Last year we had a contingency of an in-year surplus of about $900,000. We knew what it was. If we have conservative estimates, which are supposedly our contingencies, we have no idea what it is. We have no control whether you are padding it by 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever it is. We don't know from the day we pass the budget until the day we get our financial statements whether we hit the number or not. If you put contingencies upon departments and upon specific items, we lose control. We have no choice and no direction at this table. The way it was built last year, it allowed the board to understand what our contingency was, to build a surplus, and if we needed to tap into it, as we did, we knew why, we knew what, and we knew how we were going to recover, and we knew when it was going to be accessed. The current process, you're asking us to go through the dark with a blindfold on and hope and pray that we get there. And I don't like that. I think that is hiding contingencies and not allowing trustees to make the decision. I think if individual components are padded or using very conservative estimates, use the estimates that we anticipate, build the contingency in as an in-year surplus, and then we have choice. That's the expectation I think that the communities want. That's the expectations that I have. And I think that's where we need to be moving towards, not the reverse. We started to move towards it last year. We need to ensure that we go back and we have that same process in place. When I made reference to contingencies upon contingencies, I didn't want to have $1 million contingency or an in-year surplus while individual budgets are still having those conservative estimates. We need to make sure that we are budgeting to what we think we're going to spend, live within our means, and if we can't, why can't we? And how can we recover? The way it's done right now, we don't know what that is. So I think there's some work to be done.
Trustee McAllister?
Were we not told just a few moments ago that each department has built in a contingency within its own budget?
Some. I believe it's some.
Therefore, Why can't we trust the estimate?
Just a comment, right? Trustee Cartner.
Through you, Chair, to Superintendent Barclay. The fund we had, the surplus we had last year, some of that money was used for our EAs that were hired throughout the school year, was it not? This year, my understanding from what you explained was that in the program budget, those EAs that were hired then have already been considered in this year's budget from program. There's no contingency. We're not looking for extras out of the surplus, hopefully, for EAs this year.
Through you, Chair. That's correct. We have put forth a number of EAs up front and also built in 20 EAs to allow us to add over the course of the year. So that's in that special education number that you see there.
McPherson.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Two questions for the chair. So, as a follow-up to Carl's question, these are no longer temporary hires. In other words, if we hired them last year, the anticipation is they will be working for us this year. Is that my assumption correct? Okay.
The number of positions.
Second question, in regards to line number 4 up here, the one that's in brackets bothers me. Budget reflects zero bottom line impact at this point. There are areas that we traditionally overspend on. So let's just pick 5% out of the air and say that we have 5% more teachers than we're funded for. Yet those teachers will get the negotiated increase the same as the 100% that are getting it. We've got 105% teachers. So where are we going to get that increase as those agreements come into place? $90,000, unfortunately, is not going to cut it. So I don't want to see us in September, October, going back and revisiting this line and saying, we've overspent here and we've got this negotiated increase. And there may be other areas involving staffing where we've overspent simply to supply the needs of the students. And that's one of the disadvantages of having a board of small schools. So that's a concern. I don't know whether you've got the answer for it tonight or not, but through the chair.
Thank you. Superintendent
Through
Bartlett.
you, Mr. Chair. So with regards to how we staff, Superintendent Dawes may want to add to this. So when we staff in, we figure out how much we can afford in terms of staffing. We do not allocate all those staff in the spring for that very reason. We allocate staff to our schools so that we are compliant with ministry class sizes, collective agreement requirements, but we still have part of that funding or allocation that we will use in the fall if and when we need it to add staff to the system. So we don't put it all out and then realize that, oh, we needed a teacher in this school and not this school. We keep some flexibility or some of the funding until such time as we know which students arrive, in what grades, and where at what schools. So in effect, that is a way we manage as well. It's a bit of a contingency as well until we know what we're dealing with in the fall.
Thank you. Trustee Armour.
Through you, Chair, just to pick up on what Trustee McDonald said about contingencies. I think we do owe the public an obligation to make sure that we're accountable for the money that we spend in educating our kids. And so how hard would it be to show us what those contingencies are?
Director, I'll start with you.
Well, Mr. Chair, through you, one manner in which we do that is through our enrollments. We staff with a contingency in mind based on a differential when we look at the trending about whether our student numbers are up or down. Members of the board will recall last year that while we approached those enrollment numbers conservatively, we did benefit from greater enrollment than what we were counting on. And that generated not just our general enrollment grant, but some benefits for special education as well through our per pupil amount and so forth. We already have a built-in contingency as per the board's presentation that they received in last board meeting on 10th of May, where you'll recall that there was a $300K amount that was identified through our primary presentation to the board at that time. The rest of the details we should talk further about as staff based on whatever direction or guidance you wish to give us as a team.
I have some concern about getting into the weeds on this one, because I think the only thing that we need to know is that there is a projected built-in contingency within departments. If we start getting into the weeds about the actual numbers, then we're infringing on operational matters, and I don't think we should be doing that.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you. I disagree. I don't think this is an operational matter when we're talking about a $350 million budget, and whether we have contingencies by department or contingencies as a whole. That's not the weeds. The weeds would be getting into making sure that we have a particular program in a classroom. And I'm not talking about that today. I'm talking about making sure that we can be accountable to our communities, and you can go back to your school councils in your communities and say, I know where the money went. The way it's set up right now, we have no idea what the contingency is. We have no idea what the conservative estimate is. I don't like that. We need to know what the budget amount is. If we hit it, that's great. If we don't, why not? And what are we going to do? The way it's set up right now, we have no idea whether we're going to hit our numbers or not. We have no idea whether there's an underestimate of enrollment, knowing that we're going to get an additional 200 students, and then it'd be great if we did, but I know that's not what it is. I'm using examples. I think it's important for us to look at what we did last year. We had a situation where we had almost $1 million surplus. We used half of that in year. We knew why we used it in year. If we do this today, we pass this budget the way it's set up, we'll have no idea whether we've met our budget, met our conservative estimates, overshot certain things. There's no idea what we're doing here. And I think that is incumbent upon us. It's really one of our duties, the fiduciary responsibility of this board, to make sure that we understand where the money is going and what it's being spent for. We're accountable to make sure that the $350 million that we get is used in the areas that the ministry says it should be, and that we're achieving the results that we want. Certainly we set direction through our mission, vision, values, strategic plan, board work plan. We need to make sure that the overall funds are being allocated to match that and to meet the ministry requirements. Mr. Chair, I'd like to pass a motion tonight to have the contingencies revisited and those department contingencies be removed and added as the in-year surplus and presented back to the board.
Do you have a?
I don't have a seconder yet.
And just before I go there, Trustee Allen, when you or Superintendent Allen, when you added those 20 EAs into your budget, which would have been the 20 EAs we would have paid for out of the contingency that we would have had, or surplus from last year, had you not put that into the budget, How much would we have saved in that area, which would have gone to the surplus? Approximately. Well, you're talking 20 EAs?
About $1 million.
About $1 million. For you, Chair.
So there's your surplus right there. So had you not,
Budget.
we would have been 1.1.
Been below.
But I just wanted to get that clear, because I think that's a really important point, that there was a proactive step taken, and by doing that proactive step, it reduced our surplus to 100,000. I still get your point, but I just needed to make that point as well.
Just a clarification, that's one example. There may be others.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Could be.
incumbent upon us to understand where that is.
Okay. So that would definitely be classified as a contingency. So,
You have a motion on the floor.
we have a
but no
motion
second.
on the floor. The motion, just a second, you got it in front of me here?
You need to hear the wording again.
Can you word that for us?
Motion that administration, or we direct the director to remove the contingencies from individual departments and add any contingencies that have been budgeted into the in-year surplus.
You might have to go a little bit slower on that. I couldn't even write that one.
I'm not sure if I'll say it the same way, but
That's why I'm asking you to go slower.
that we direct the director to remove any department contingencies from the current budget presentation and added into the in-year surplus line.
Surplus
Okay.
Budget presented tonight.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, you want to reread that?
That the Upper Canada District School Board, it should be direct the director to remove any department contingencies from the current surplus line. Question?
Mr. Chair, just to refine that, to, as an addendum, as part of the 2017-2018 budget preparations.
Sorry, can you read that again?
I'm just going to take the word redirect out to direct.
Put direct.
Yeah. So that the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to remove any department contingencies from the current surplus line.
No. There is no current surplus line. We want it removed from the department budgets and added to the surplus
Okay.
line.
From the department budgets and added to the surplus line.
In-year surplus.
In-year surplus. Added to the in-year surplus line.
To the surplus? In-year.
In-year. Yeah.
To the in-year.
Yeah, to the in-year surplus line. All right, so I've got the motion, and we want to get this right, but we also want to make it clear
You
for
want
us.
to add
No.
in addition to?
No, I have a question.
Mr. Chair, I was just saying that to make sure there's a provenance or connection to that, to the budget itself, as part of the budget presentation to trustees for the 2017-2018 budget.
Okay, just want to reference it, so someone down the road looking at this knows exactly what it is. So just add that last section. You fine with that, Trustee McDonald, just to clarify exactly what we're talking about 5 years from now?
I don't think we'll worry about it in 5 years, but.
No, but you know what I'm saying, if somebody references back.
2017. Budget presentation.
Okay, so I have a motion in front of me, moved by Trustee McDonald, I'll just read it and we'll get a seconder. That the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to remove any budget contingencies from the department budgets and add to the in-year surplus line as part of the 2017-18 budget presentation to the board. Is that fine? Need a seconder? Trustee Yarmer?
Move that, sorry.
Moved by Trustee McDonald. Seconded by Trustee Farmer, there he goes. Okay, so we're not gonna take the vote yet, we just have a discussion on that.
Bill?
Yes.
Trustee Bill McPherson?
Much as I like the sound of a $900,000 surplus, does this mean that the EAs that were hired last year, largely from this surplus, are no longer going to be part of our school plan when we open in the fall? From my perspective, giving up 20 EAs is not worth the $900,000. We know that Spec Ed is going to be short this year, and I commend the board for supporting us over the last few years. However, it's one of those situations where I'm not prepared to support robbing from Peter to pay Paul. Much as I like the thought of a $900,000 surplus, I am not willing to vote to give up that many people that are involved in classroom support.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Trustee McDonald?
I want to clarify the intent of the motion for Trustee McPherson. It's not to rob anyone. It's for us to have a clear understanding of what actual contingencies we do have, rather than having something built into the current budget that's 20 EAs. We may need 50 EAs. We may need 10 EAs. But if we put it in the overall board surplus, just as we did last year, there's a requirement for that. Superintendent Allen, or however the process would be, comes, and he really doesn't have to come back. You have to hire them. We have to hire those people. But it's going to eat away at that surplus. But we need to know what's been eaten away at the surplus. It's understanding what the total number is, and then how it gets removed from that in-year surplus, if it is. And it's just a more transparent opportunity for us as trustees, and transparent to the communities, and more accountability to the communities for us to be able to say, here's what happened. Otherwise, we have no clue.
Trustee Bill McPherson and Trustee Kirkman?
From my perspective, once again, I think it's poor optics for this board to all of a sudden dismiss 20 EAs in June to accumulate a $900,000 surplus.
Can you clarify?
Well, I'll clarify it. I think what Trustee McDonald is saying is that we're not asking that to be removed or taken away from the budget, just to show us how that was calculated in, so we can see what the contingency calculations were. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. From what I understand, we have staffed according to the number of students that we have today, or what we anticipate for September 1st. From what we understand tonight, Superintendent Allen put in an additional allotment for 20 EAs in the event that we would need them. So nobody's losing their job. Nobody's removing money. We're taking that money and we're saying it's going to be here, and if you need it, use it. We're not laying anybody off. In fact, we're probably going to be hiring people in September because we need additional EAs. No one's losing their job. No money is being cut. It's a reallocation so that we know where the money is and why it's being used.
Go back to Trustee McPherson on that.
Point of clarification. One hand, I hear from staff that these are to be permanent hires. Correct?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
We'll pass it over to Chair.
The next hand, I see that what we're proposing, we're going to have this pot of money over here, and you've got a job if we need you. So, scenario A and scenario B, which one will involve the layoff? Because you're not going to keep somebody on staff over the summer, so to speak, if you're not sure you're going to need them in the fall. So are they going to have to be dismissed?
Superintendent Allen, I'm going to ask you for some clarity here.
Through you, Chair. Our current contingency, our current proposed EA staffing, we haven't moved forward with it yet, actually has an increase of our current present day staff, as well as a contingency of 20 EAs. So it would be, the 20 contingency is for new people coming in. So we are already above. Our projected staffing is just above what we currently have in our classrooms today. And then there's a 20, we built in the spec ed budget, there's a contingency built in on top of that.
Trustee Gardner, thank you.
Just through you, Chair, to Superintendent Barclay. When you bring the revised estimates to us after we've approved a budget, would we not know then what contingencies were used in the person's budget? When you give us those revised estimates after the budget's been passed? Or we could ask to have that done? Go ahead. Getting away from the spec ed budget.
Oh. Well, through you, Chair, what we would bring is a finer tuning of the expenses as projected for the year.
Right.
Updated enrollment, updated expenses.
So if, follow up? So if there was money set aside as a contingency in, say, Superintendent Hobbs's budget, although he's cut his by $1 million some already, and he uses it, that money that he has extra, and he uses it in the fall, would we not be told what it was used for? No. I'm getting no from here. What am I getting from you?
Through you, Chair. So when Superintendent Hobbs gets his expense budget, or he develops it in line with his funding, he manages it himself and decides how it will be used.
Right. But he doesn't budget a contingency? May I ask Superintendent Hobbs?
Superintendent Hobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, in the area of facilities operations, I would say we're a little bit different than some other departments in the sense that we don't have the cyclical or annual uncertainty that some other departments have in response to the number of students who may show up. So we don't have that level of uncertainty because the staffing tends to be the same from year to year, more or less, at schools. Where we do have uncertainty is in the various line items of things like hydro, snow plowing, and those kinds of things. But we don't carry a line item contingency in the departmental budget for those kinds of things. Rather, what we tend to do is some years you have a year where the heating bill is not so high, and we'll redirect the money we haven't spent on the heating bill towards doing more maintenance in the schools. And other years, when you have a high snow plowing bill in the winter, we tend to, in the summer, at the end of the fiscal year, dial back on some of the maintenance activities. So it's really not a line item that we would carry in the budget as much as it is a sort of a minor rebalancing that we do throughout the year so that we meet our bigger target throughout the year. Now, that may be different for other departments, but that's how our department works, just by virtue of the
picked the wrong department.
Yeah, I picked the wrong department. Thank you.
Trustee McDonald. I'm aware that the discussion has to be focused on the motion, but we're talking contingency, so it's still part of the discussion.
Right. And my point, Mr. Chair, around the contingency, the purpose of the motion is to see what the value of that is. If we see that in the next presentation and you don't want it to be standalone and an individual in your surplus and you want to put it back in the departments, hey, that's the will of the board, then that's okay. I can live with that. But I want to know what it is. I want to be able to go to the community and say, I know what we've been able to budget for as far as a contingency goes. And if you want to use an example of expenses, it also comes back to what we have in the current year. So let's get another example. If we have something set up that we have a contingency set up and we don't spend it all, how do we know that the funds are going to be allocated in the way that the board wishes? Right? So if we have $1 million that is accumulated for that surplus, and it's not coming from spec ed, it's coming from wherever, and we don't need it, and if it's individual departments that have it, we as a board will never know that we are overspent or underspent. All we know is that the budget amount stays the same and things move on. It's incumbent upon us to know what that amount is. That's why I'm asking for this motion, so that we see where the contingencies are. They come out, they get into the in-year surplus. If we don't like it there, you want to put it back into departments, I can live with that, but I want to see where it is. That's the purpose of this motion, and I think it's important for us to do that.
Thank you. Trustee Armour?
I just want to remind trustees about what our duties are. And to speak to Trustee McDonald's point, the Board of Trustees is accountable to the Province of Ontario for the proper conduct of their duties and powers, including the implementation of provincial policy and the use of provincially allocated funds. And I don't think we can do that without understanding where the funds are going, which is why I back that.
Okay. Trustee Bill McPherson?
Thank you. I think we have to make sure we don't get confused between discretionary spending and contingency funding. Contingency funding is beyond the control of the Board of Trustees. That's a staff responsibility. Discretionary funding harkens back to the old days where we had a couple of $100,000 left over and we could feed pet projects, so to speak. The bottom line is when we are asked to approve this budget, it will simply be on projected revenue and the projected expenses and whatever the anticipated surplus or deficit will be. Yes, I like the idea of a $900,000 line that isn't allocated to something. But last year we did allocate that line, and it did go to special education, the vast majority of it. I personally, as a trustee, would like to know what sections of our budget are the most vulnerable. Which ones are, well, Jeremy had some excellent examples with snow plowing and heat. But if we're building the contingencies into those expense lines, then I think we're covered. But
Trustee Richards?
Through you, Chair, question for Val. Val, every year in our spec ed budget, in your budget, do you not hold back some of the allocation for EAs anyways? Like, you do your allocation for X number of EAs, but you always have that 20, 15, 20 extra in the budget that you've had that every year, haven't you?
Through you, Chair, we did not budget for that last year because of the reduction, but in the years previous we had.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to Trustee McAllister then.
I'm going to speak against the motion because to determine the departmental contingencies, we cannot do that without getting into a line-by-line examination of the budgets in each department, and I don't think that that's our business, frankly.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote then. Okay. And that is, the motion is defeated. Pardon me? Oh, sorry, Trustee Garrell? So it would still be defeated. Trustee Swan, sorry, I spoke too soon.
Sorry, the motion hasn't shown up on my screen.
Okay. I'll just read the motion. Can we just go down a little bit? That the Upper Canada District School Board direct the director to remove any department contingencies from the department budget and add it to in-year surplus as part of the 2017-18 budget presentation to the board.
I'm against.
Opposed? Okay. And that, again, that is defeated. Okay. Pardon me?
Garrett took a vote.
Wouldn't matter. Trustee Garrett was included.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Are there any more comments or questions? Mr. McDonald?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question on the budget. On slide 13, we see that for the last 4 years we've surpassed the anticipated accumulated surplus plan. And we have been over the target of the province. Based on what how we have performed, I think it's important for us to review this multi-year financial plan and adjust the targets. Rather than moving forward to anticipated goal for 2022 and 2023, I think we should be reviewing this and adjusting accordingly. We've managed to perform to the point where we were at least 50% or better onto the plan. We're now 60-some% away from the goal. I think as a board we should be reviewing that to make the date a little closer to reality as opposed to coasting for the next 4 or 5 years, which would allow us, I guess, to not be as aggressive within our budget process if we were to coast for the next 5 years. So I would like to have a review of the multi-year financial plan. It doesn't need to be part of the budget agreement at this point, but I think we have this discussion before our revised estimates of next year. And I would move that we have that as a agenda item in the fall of 2017.
Okay. So, yeah, here's a notice. Can you work that one for us?
Motion that we review the multi-year financial plan in the fall of 2017 prior to the revised estimates being reviewed.
The multi-year financial plan.
Motion to review. To review the multi-year.
People are okay with it, I guess.
So we just have a portion of that.
Motion to review the multi-year financial plan in the fall of 2017 in advance of
the revised estimates being reviewed.
Okay, so a motion to review the multi-year financial plan in the fall of 2017 in advance of the revised estimate to be reviewed. That the wording you want?
Revised estimates being reviewed. So that usually happens in December?
Yep. In advance of the revised estimates to be reviewed. That's fine, that wording? Yep. Okay, moved by Trustee McDonald. Do I have a seconder?
Peter will second.
Okay, Trustee Garrell's going to second that. Comments or questions on this? Trustee McDonald or McAllister?
I must speak against this again because, frankly, I think it's unfair to our finance department, because their work is based on the multi-year financial plan, which was approved, and the implication of the motion is that it's wrong, and I don't think it is, so I speak against it.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald?
Trustee McAllister, it would be a shock if you actually agreed with something I said, but I will provide some information to you. I don't think it's an indication that our finance department is wrong. I think it's that we performed better than we anticipated. And so as a result of that, we should review it. Just as continuous improvement model works, you look at something, you see how you're doing, and you reevaluate, you set new goals. I'm suggesting that we have a review. I'm not suggesting we set the goal today. If you don't like to talk about finance matters, that's fine. We can certainly forget about that, but that's the purpose for the motion.
Trustee McDonald,
no, I'm sorry. I'm just
asking you to keep some of the comments out.
I'm not directing it.
No? Well, indirectly. Please don't. Just continue. with what you're doing. Just leave those comments out,
Well,
please.
the reason for the motion is so that we as a board can talk about our finances.
No, I agree with that part. I'm just talking about the personal comments. Okay. Other comments or questions? Okay, ask you to take a vote on that, please. Okay, I have 5, so that carries.
It's just Bill.
Oh, Trustee McPherson,
Just voted.
opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Abstain is classified as opposed. Can you scroll up a little bit? Can't get the counting here.
Sorry, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Tally is at the bottom.
It's a tie vote. Oh, there's only, Trustee McPherson isn't here, not voting. Tie vote is a defeat. Okay, it's defeated. Any other comments or questions on the budget for tonight?
Well, it seems like a moot point, but I would like to have a report from staff as EPO grants are released and identified whether they were budgeted in the current budget proposal.
Do you have a timeline on that?
As they're released.
As they're released? So you want to bring that forward as a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the motion is you're directing the
director.
The director. How are you enjoying this, Hillary? Okay.
Director.
That the director will
Provide a report to the board.
Okay, we'll provide a
as EPO grants are released.
Okay.
And identify whether they've been included in the current budget or not.
As to whether.
That the director will provide a report to the board as EPO grants are released and something about identified
whether the specific expense has been included in the current budget.
Identified if the expense, is that it is?
Yeah, sure.
In the current budget.
In the current budget, yeah.
Specific expense.
The director will provide a report to the board as EPO grants are released and identify if, so we'll just get if in there, if the specific expense has been identified in the current budget. All right.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we've got that moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Callister. And let's have a conversation.
I'd like to speak to the motion because I'm very interested in budget process.
Okay.
And I think this is a very important point that we should know about these EPO grants when they arrive, and I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you, Trustee McAllister. Are there any other, Trustee Armour?
Typically, are these grants used within the current year, or is this something I don't know?
I'm not
maybe
sure.
the director could talk about that, or is that something that this motion will?
Are you talking about them being used or the grants coming in?
No, within that current budget year. Is it something that we can carry forward to subsequent years?
Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, I don't think it's an unreasonable request. It would be, I think, certainly in line with knowing that the board has a strategic plan about asking about how we can leverage further the priorities of the board through the grants. So I think it's manageable.
Okay. Through you,
Follow up?
Chair.
Yep, certainly.
It just speaks to the point about, as trustees, making sure that we are allocating provincial funds properly. So I am in support of this motion too as well.
Okay, Trustee, I'm going to ask for a vote. I'm not sure where Trustee Cram got to. Trustee Cram, were you here for the vote? Thank you. Okay, can I ask you cast your votes, please?
gotta hit it again.
Trustee Cram, you in favor?
Watched it 3 or 4 times.
Supposed to hug it, not
Working, but that's, oh, you got it now, trustee. Thank you very much. That carries
Unanimously.
unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Carol and Michael. Appreciate that. Okay, we have a report from SEAC.
Right. In the light of saving some time, the report's in front of you. Read it. If there's any questions, ask.
Is there anything that you'd like to highlight that was from what we should have read? Anything in particular you want to highlight?
No, it was very interesting. If you want the highlights, we talked about money with our superintendent, Nancy Barkley. We also had a presentation by the intensive support teachers. Again, it was a very interesting presentation. They talked about their work within the board. We did look at the spec ed plan, which we'll hopefully have for you ready next month. And we also had, let's see. Okay. We had a presentation on the Saginaw.
No, that was.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I can't find it here, but.
That was the meeting before.
What?
That was the meeting before.
Okay. Anyways, that's it.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Moving on to OPSWA, a report from OPSWA.
Very quickly, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to bring the attention to trustees, the AGM being held June 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th in Collingwood, Blue Mountain, Weston Trillium, or whatever the place is called. Some of the keynote speakers that particular event, I believe this individual was in Ottawa last year, Sandra Herbst. Assessment in the service of learning. She was quite engaging with the audience on her presentation. I think she comes from Manitoba, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. Anyway, very good presenter. A lot of good information last year, and certainly she's back this year. We also have Ramona Pringle from Ryerson University talking on surviving and thriving in an era of disruption, preparing the next generation for the age of automation. And then also Joseph Boyden, a Canadian author, will be there as well. Some of the workshops or sessions that we will have. Ombudsman oversight of school boards, what's in it for you? The anticipation was to have the ombudsman there. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed yet or not, but that's at least someone from the office would be there, I believe. Your rights in social media, another topic. Internal audit process and audit committees. That'll be on one of the sessions. Equity and diversity panel, and also a labor relations update, providing information on as to what's changing or what has changed, I guess, over the last little while in the province. The other thing I wanted to touch base on is a lot of things happening around the legislature right now. Of note, the biggest one for us, I've got to find it right now. Bill 68, Modernizing Ontario's Municipal Legislation Act. So this is at third reading right now. The impacts on school boards are related to pregnancy and parental leave. Government to extend the same pregnancy and parental leave requirements to school boards as is proposed for municipalities. So it would go to 20 weeks. And a requirement for a policy on pregnancy and parental leave at the board. Term start date would change for board for trustees, but it would only be effective in 2022. Currently, we start on December 1st. It would go to November 15th. That'll take place in 2022 if passed. The next piece is around disclosure of conflict of interest. Requirement for trustees to provide written disclosure on the conflict of interest. School boards to create a separate conflict of interest registry. And also around the conflict of interest application. So currently there are some specific requirements about who can bring an allegation forward that an individual trustee might be in conflict. The conflict of interest applications if passed, would be include an elector, so any elector, an integrity commissioner of the municipality, or a person acting in the public interest. So I think I spoke previously, essentially we could have someone in Sarnia see what's been happening in Upper Canada and put a claim in against a particular trustee over conflict of interest on a specific item. It doesn't have to be someone within the constituency if they can make a case that they're acting in the public interest. So that is moving forward. The other piece of legislation that has some impact on school boards is the Anti-Racism Act. It was introduced by Minister Michael Koto. School board impact is legislation states the lieutenant governor and council may make regulation requiring or authorizing public sector organizations to collect specified information, including personal information, in relation to specified programs, services, and functions, or the purpose of eliminating systemic racism and advancing racial equity. So that would require some new information for us to be categorized. The other piece is the Safe School Zones Act. That's at third reading as well. That would require or allow, I guess, the use of automated speed enforcement, photo radar, in school zones and community safety zones. Most municipalities around schools have community safety zones, which have increased fines if you have traffic violations in those community safety zones. And again, just around legislation, it's been ongoing, but the rural and remote education review has gone forward, and OPSPA does have a package that's on the website around key messages, and the submission to the PARG funding on community hubs is there as well. Talks about the process on community hubs. There is an actual site for community hubs, just switching gears a little bit. It's www.communityhubsontario.ca. All those links are in the Connect email that you would have received from OPSPA, and that website is still in the beta mode, but it talks about, it'll provide information around the stages of community hub development, community hubs FAQ, and community hubs map, GIS app that will identify where community hubs may be located currently or in the process of being worked through. So if you have a chance, go through the OPSPA Cadex reports, and you'll see the link there for that. That's my report.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Okay, Director. Comments?
Point of procedure, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Knowing what the rest of the agenda is when we go into privacy, so we don't have to interrupt that particular point. We get a motion to extend now until 11. Hopefully it won't be that late, but we don't know how long the other presentations are going to be in private.
Well, yeah, that's a good assumption. Okay, good. All right, so motion to extend the meeting until 11 o'clock. Moved by Trustee Cram. Do I have a second? Trustee Kartner?
Otherwise,
No, I didn't want to be cut off in my remarks. So we have a motion to extend the board meeting of May the 24th, 2017 to 11 p.m. Moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by Trustee Kartner. Cast your votes, please. Trouble with that, and that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With that extra 60 minutes, I can complete my presentation, so much appreciated. Just very briefly, Mr. Chair, trustees, a very proud moment for us as a school district. The Ministry of Education held their provincial revised math strategy conference in Toronto last week, and we were only one of two public boards that made a plenary presentation about our math strategy at the request of the ministry, and how we were trying to build our capacities to improve how we teach in mathematics, K to 12, and how we were actually sharing data, bringing a variety of people to the table, so it's not just our principals, not just our teachers and principals together. How our senior staff are involved in the dialogue in those types of sessions, and how we're seeing movement, particularly in our grade 9 applied math experiences in our schools. So I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Superintendent Allen and her large role that she's playing in moving us forward that way and developing provincial recognition. And as well, Shelley Corleon, one of our assistant principals, who was our presenter and who did us very, very proud at that session, as well as our collaboration with the Ministry of Education and what we're doing locally and in our schools is attracting the proper attention for all the right reasons. So I just thought it was important for the board to know that we know that we have to work on how our children are learning and better understanding math, and we're being recognized at a provincial level about our efforts.
Thank you very much, Director. I just have two comments I want to make. The first one, all of us know that Lisa Workman's husband Murray's brother passed away suddenly, so our condolences go to Murray and the family. We want to thank Hillary for the work that you've done tonight, Hillary. It's nice to know that we have someone that can step in and do a fantastic job, and we thank you very much for doing that for us. The second thing, trustees, I sent you an email just before the board meeting. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at it. I just want to draw your attention to one of those, of the two items. It's the on June the 5th at 9:30 at Queen Elizabeth School in Perth. As part of our Canada 150 celebrations, we are very fortunate to have Her Excellency Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, Elizabeth Dadswell. And I've met this woman when she was in Brockville about 2 years ago, I believe, or years ago. And we're quite honored to have her. Very well-spoken woman, and what impressed me is her link to education. She has a background in education, so if you get an opportunity to attend, I hope you will. If you're going, because this is a school event, it's important that we know who's going to be there so they can be announced. And if you can do that, just contact the director's office by May the 31st so we have a good understanding. Again, it's at Queen Elizabeth School, June the 5th at 9:30 in the morning. So if you can possibly be there, that'd be great. An opportunity to meet a fantastic Canadian. And that's all I have to say.
May I just add one thing?
Yes,
Mr. Chair?
certainly.
I don't normally do this, Mr. Chair, but I did want to say that on Monday in Cornwall there was a mayor's picnic, and the Upper Canada Board received an award. It was presented by Heritage Cornwall for the work that the Upper Canada Board did to preserve the heritage component at Central Public. I was pleased to attend and accept the award with about a dozen students from Central Public and Principal Beck. I don't have the award here because the award is in the school, rightly where it belongs with the students at Central. But I was very pleased to have Principal Beck and a dozen students there to help accept that award. So
and well deserved, because if you've ever been to that school, the way the architecture was created is absolutely amazing. Thanks. Okay, I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into committee of whole. Moved by Trustee Bill McPherson, seconded by Trustee Armour. And just cast your votes, please.
yes.
Okay. We're doing the legal matter first.
I'm already out.
Just a show of hands.
Yes.
Anyone on the phone line opposed?
Fine, Bob.
Thank you very much. That carries. Okay, and moving on to the second one is a motion that the committee of the whole move into private session. Moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Armour. Again, a show of hands, please. Thank you very much. So we're going to move into the private session. We're going to begin the private session. Actually, we're going to pass